There you go. Good evening. I'd like to call the Village Council Budget Work Session meeting to order, April 9th, 2024. I show the time at 5:01. I also show we have a full quorum. So we'll move right on to the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any changes, anything we want to add or take off?
Nope.
Hearing none, I need a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Hearing none. Motion passes. Next up, we have budget work session. And we are looking to consider adoption of the revised fiscal year 2025 to 2029 capital improvement plan, CIP.
We're just waiting on Christine and Jill. They're almost happy. They're sort of happy.
You're up. It's in your package.
Can you put it on the,
Put it on the big screen, Austin.
One second.
so while he's pulling that up, have you opened the meeting? You guys have opened the meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. The CIP was presented at the last meeting. There's really no changes other than what you guys directed us to do. So what you see is, what you see in your agenda packets is the reflection of the changes that were made at the last meeting. If you can just scroll down to the totals.
I'm gonna zoom out a bit because it's really easy.
So really in fiscal year 24-25, you see the vehicle purchase and public works at $30,000. You see 0 park amenities, 0 heritage park, pocket park, 0 across the board in admin. You do see the $35,000 heritage district master plan and the floodplain and engineering analysis at $50,000 in the greenways and trails. And if you can scroll down just a hair. Scroll down, please. So there's a total of $178,000 that's being requested in the CIP for next year. And those are all, again, reflective of the changes that you all mentioned at the last meeting. We pushed everything back a year. So you'll hear the same conversation on most of those items that we heard last month with the addition of anything that takes place over the next year. Are there any questions on the CIP as presented?
Nope.
Again, just for a reminder, this is just a planning document. This helps us to guide the budget as well as to look at upcoming grant projects that we may find funding for future projects. This is not a binding document. This does not mean that if there's money earmarked in future years that we're actually putting a budget to it. It's just a planning document.
All right, does anybody have any questions for Christina or Jill?
If not, we're asking for approval of this.
All right, so I'm gonna make a motion.
Hold on.
Well, how about I make a motion, then you ask for?
Okay.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion to adopt the fiscal year 25 to 29 capital improvement plan as presented.
Further discussion. So basically, we were just pushing everything back a year.
Did you guys, you all had also asked Hunter to see a copy of some plans. Did y'all want him to pass that out to you, or do you just want to take it home and look at it for yourselves?
Plans
Oh,
for,
yeah. I
For the
wanna
master
see 'em.
plan?
I did some research and I feel like the price that we're being requested is pretty on point because it's basically with the master plans, you can kind of, you're going through based off of what the scope and what you want to include and not include. I do have a few examples, like of so either the RFQ and or the actual master plan, if you guys want to see them. But in short, what I'd be basically requesting out of this would basically be to look at the main areas of focus would be natural, like stormwater, water sewer, traffic improvements needed based off of, information that we provide them and how we foresee the district coming together, pedestrian improvements, so on, really not focus on the actual design, individual design aspects, but more looking at the information needed or, so that we can either plan from an organizational standpoint, but also then have this information for developers.
Understand the money and everything. But last week, we had a little discussion among ourselves, and this week, we had a little discussion among ourselves. What did we learn from the election, from the vote on the bonds the last time? And everybody had a different idea. I have an idea that basically people they don't want to spend any money, period. Now, I understand there's some things that we really, safety-wise and stuff, we need to do that, but I understand that some people want the trails for connectivity and et cetera. But does the village as a whole want it? I mean, and how can we, if we still want to do it, how can we find out what they really want?
So the intent of this it's not necessarily to map out all that stuff. It's more of looking at the feasibility and certain things needed kind of now once the MDO is adopted next month. I mean, I've seen them where like, for example, Cornelius just did one for their downtown master plan and had a specific section in there for a public parking analysis. And it's stuff like that where then we can test it against our code to make sure that, hey, what we are trying to achieve based off of the small area plan and already in the development ordinance, is there any foreseen issues there, either not enough parking, too much parking type stuff? And I'm just using parking as a specific example of what all would be in this plan. But like I said, it'd also be looking at infrastructure needs would be the biggest thing. Because at the end of the day, that there's certain upfits, improvements, including with stormwater, that the developer is responsible for building and doing. But some of those expectations and what's going to be needed is the information that we're kind of lacking to really make this district, more become an actual thing instead of the vision that it is.
Wayne, you're not just necessarily talking about the master plan. You're talking about the whole CIP as a whole, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, and you make a very valid point. But I don't know that that's what I learned, because we talked about it earlier. Because I do know that there's a lot of people out there who wanted some things and not other things. And there were some people who didn't mind paying the increase in taxes, and there are some people that do. So how do we know what people want? I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know. So,
I think we can only base it on the last survey we did. Until we get a new survey, we look at that and
yeah, and we can't stop doing things for the village and improvements while we're waiting for that.
Is the last survey 19 or 2024?
Well, we're 19, because 2024 wasn't a survey.
It was just a
It was
wake up call.
well,
no, it's just,
because people voted no for a lot of different reasons.
and
And
they didn't show up.
to get educated. And if they did and they still didn't want to vote for it, that's fine. Like, we said that from the beginning. I know people are just so upset with us that we put out a bond on a bond referendum. We could have just raised taxes. We could have just done it without asking people. And the fact that it didn't pass, I don't think is, after having time to reflect on it, I don't think it was we don't want anything. I think there is a lot of different feelings about the bond. And some people just, didn't want the increase in taxes. They love all the things, but they just didn't want to pay for it. There were a lot of people who, didn't mind paying for it, but didn't want all of the things. So I think that, I think we put into place where we're going to start trying to work on a new survey. But again, I don't think we can sit here and wait and twiddle our thumbs until we have that done. I think we've got to continue to, to move the business of the village forward.
One of the things that I would have been thinking about too is, a lot of the people just said, I want Marvin to be what it is now. And part of what Marvin is now is the investments that we've already made in some trails and greenways and the park and the roads, the roundabouts, the Heritage District. So, when we think about all the reasons that people voted one way or the other, like Kim said, there's any number of them. But for the folks that say, I want Marvin to be what it is now, it wouldn't be what it is now if we didn't have responsible councils making the investments that we already have. So I think we have to focus on prioritizing, making good, smart financial investments that do have support within the community. The bottom line is, from a fiscal perspective, we're going to have to make those hard decisions. We've already started doing that in our budget workshops. We'll continue to do that through the budget process, but it doesn't mean you stop investing in your community. Yeah.
Talked to some people Friday, stopped by Eford Park. About 15 people out there that was there, and there were some people leaving I didn't get to talk to. Well, one of them was, they really like the park. They think it's wonderful. It's real close, except they live in South Carolina. And they come over about every day. I said, I'm not gonna start asking everybody here, to take a survey, but I didn't recognize anybody there. Didn't recognize anything about, they was grandparents, they was parents, they was kids, they was all there. And they really liked the new equipment, but except toddlers are still not, we're missing what are we missing, Christina, for the toddler,
Toddler
area?
Park.
There was some ADA issues that we were trying to reconcile.
Oh, okay. I mean, people outside of Marvin, they love what we're doing because they get to use it more than the people in Marvin, because I don't see many people that I know show up, even for Christmas and other things that we try to have for them.
I'm going to say something here that I think may be accepted, may say we could push back, that's fine. But I think the days of the squeaky wheel should be over, because that's what we did. In the past, your neighborhood, right next to your neighborhood, they came, they wanted those pathways. We worked on it and we got it done. And so we were hearing from the residents what they wanted and stuff. What I think is right, we're all at 6 cents. Let's get the roads. Let's focus on getting all the roads under the umbrella so everybody can point to Marvin when you have a road issue. Let's focus on that first, and everything else as far as pathways and that, you can come in and squeaky wheel about what you want done or what you don't want done or what you want back. Let's focus as a council, because we really don't know. It's been 5 years since we've had a thing, but we do know we've committed to the roads. And that's a big nut. And then we got to, as the dust settles and we realize, okay, we have all the roads. Now what's it going to take for a budget to keep those roads? And that's where Davey will come in, or whoever is going to present that to us. And we focus on that for now. I mean, because is it fair that the neighborhood comes in, finish our pathways? I mean, I could argue that we're all paying 6 cents, but we don't all have the pathways done. But there is one thing we've committed to, which is the roads. And that's where I'm going to kind of hang my hat on for the rest of the time in this term that I'm focusing on, because that's what I'd like to see done. But again, I don't get a vote.
So. Oh, great, so we can have a new survey, and how long? Estimate?
Depends on who you ask you're doing the survey and how.
I mean,
Well, I mean, you were gonna reach out to the resident to set that up and, okay, so we'll wait until they've offered, so we'll wait until they get back to us.
Are there any other questions on the CIP? I think you have a motion on the table.
They do.
Yeah, so hearing no further discussion, forgetting what I'm supposed to say after this. Approve or, I just totally drew a blank here because my mind was somewhere else.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks for helping me out. All right, moving on. I just drew a blank. I'm like, where am I at right now? I know. You know what? That's what a week gives you on a ship on vacation time. So, okay, presentation and discussion of the 24-25 budget. Yeah, I was not working that last week.
You can take that CIP down.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. I was even up there still.
Okay, you guys ready?
Waiting on you, princess. Let's go.
All right, so in front of you is your budget workbook. There's been a couple of changes since we last met a month ago. If you recall, staff presented a balanced budget with a 0 cent tax increase. We did advise of all the different cuts that we made to make that 0 tax increase happen. You guys didn't like those cuts and wanted us to revise the budget with adding those cuts back. So that's what we've done, and we've provided a couple of different ways to minimize the impact to taxpayers. So we're going to go over a couple of things. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of detail going into the very minutia of this. We did that at the last meeting. But in all total, you will see in the revenue section of unassigned fund balance, so right before the blue line that says total revenues, you see a $115,000 fund balance appropriation. We're projecting $207,000 at the end of this fiscal year to go back into fund balance. So we feel pretty comfortable reappropriating that fund balance into next year's budget for the purchase of the Public Works truck, the used truck that is, the floodplain and wetlands analysis that would be done on the Greenways and Trails Network, and then the Marvin Heritage District Master Plan. That's what that $115,000 would include. You also see the $50,000 in contingency. It's the line right before total expenditures in blue. We had 0 in contingency at the last presentation we did to you all, so we did add that contingency back. You all use that throughout the year for various things that might pop up that we need funding for. So all of that said, the total net budget at the bottom is $139,000 in the deficit. So that's what we would have to make up in additional revenues to balance the budget as presented, unless you want to make additional cuts. So if you want to go over, I'll tell you a couple of areas that we put back in so that we can discuss those if y'all want to make additional cuts, but we are prepared to discuss the property tax increase revenues as well. I'll spend a couple minutes on this budget that's presented in front of you though. So if you flip over to the next page, right about the middle of the page, there's a motor vehicle tag fee. It's listed at the $102,000. I just want to remind you all that that is 100% earmarked for roads and transportation. So that is it's not a new revenue, but that is we did increase that slightly from the motion that was made at the last meeting to increase it $5. That money has to be put back into roads. So you won't see that appropriated in any other department as we discuss these items. You also see no revenues for Marvin Day. That's the sponsorships. Obviously, we would strive to have donors and sponsorships, but we didn't want to rely on that for funding because we've had problems year after year trying to obtain funding. So we did put 0 in for that. And again, you see that $115,000 in fund balance with the wetlands and floodplain delineation, the used truck, and the Heritage Master Plan. Are there any questions on revenues at all? If not, we will skip over. Nothing has really changed drastically in any of these departments, but I did want to remind you all that we did add a full-time employee for planning and zoning as identified in a study that we did maybe 2 or 3 years ago. We were short in our planning department and have been postponing the hiring of a full-time position to help in that area. We have gotten to the point where we just can't postpone it anymore. So we have put a full-time position in for planning and zoning assistants. And then as we've grown in facility maintenance in terms of maintaining this building, maintaining the park, maintaining the roundabouts, the additional trail space that we've had, and then potentially at some point taking over some minor level of road maintenance, putting up signs, that kind of stuff. We have added a additional maintenance staff in our public works. So as we go through these departments, you will see those two full-time positions in there. In addition to that, I will say that we've had a drastic increase in our LEO contract. It went up about 9%. That's a big difference in what we've seen in the past. Typically, it's around 3 or 4%, but that did go up pretty drastically this year. That budget alone sits around 1.5 to 2 cents. Yeah, that budget alone is $256,000. So 1 cent of revenue brings in about 169,000. So it's a little over 1 cent that just LEOs cost us annually.
And that's not our decision.
It would be I mean, you could obviously get rid of law enforcement, but you would have a
No, but I'm
reduced.
saying that increase did not come from us.
It did not, no.
Okay,
It's a
I
good-
want to be clear in that because we were, oh, well, it did not come from us. This come from, if you want to take it up with somebody, take it up with Sheriff Caffey.
It is a contractual service, and I did ask why the drastic increase this year. And if you recall, we had the same problem a couple of years ago where we had not kept up with staff salaries over the years. And that's basically the same thing that they had is they did a survey on their pay schedule, and they were drastically underpaying their employees. So they did a compensation adjustment. That was one of the reasons. To try to account for that adjustment, they did try to defer the purchasing of their equipment 1 year to kind of offset that. So they did try to help, but it's just catching up with times.
They gave us the presentation and went through the whole.
That's
I mean,
right.
They went through the whole gamut of what it was. So, I guess there's this phenomenon going around that there's increase in everything, inflation in everything, but not in Marvin government. Maybe we'll try to figure that out someday. Maybe we can get Central Piedmont to do a study on that. I don't know.
Across the board, I will say we saw in our preparations from our department heads, we saw a drastic increase in contractual services, whether it be, our website person, our insurance, our health insurance went up pretty drastically this year. Just across the board, we did see an increase in contractual services from just various things that we have. Our retirement, which is a mandated requirement for all local governments in North Carolina, went up this year as well. So you'll see that throughout this document itself. There's nothing really different in general government, just minus those things that I just mentioned, but you're not really going to see there's no new employees in general government. We did itemize out a portion of the position that's in planning and zoning because they are doing some minor level of communications. So that's itemized out in general government salaries. But aside from that, they're pretty much across the board. Are there any questions in general government?
Can
sorry?
you go, because we're going to hear about this, can you go through the contingency? Because we put 50,000 in contingency difference from last year.
We put 50,000 in last year.
And you got
We did, yeah, we put it in. It's actually in the revenues tab.
I got you, but you got a 10,000% increase there. Is that something?
A 10,000 increase.
Look at the first page, the very first page.
Very first page. You go
So
down.
what you're looking at is, it looks like it's a giant increase, but it's because we used the contingency that we had set aside for this year. And in order for us to use it, you all have to approve a budget amendment. So it looks like our amended budget is now like less than $500. So to go up to 50,000 and replenish it for next year, it looks as though we're increasing from 500 to 50,000, but that's not really how it works. We budgeted 50,000, I think, originally this year as well. We had to use it for various things that came up throughout the year.
Right. I'm asking the question and thanks for the clarification
Mhm.
because somewhere,
Right.
someone is going to put out that we did a 10,000% percent
Percent,
increase
yeah.
in something, and I appreciate the explanation.
Yeah, and the
knew that we-
adopted budget is on our website, so these numbers are based on our amended, and it is one of those weird accounts that before we can spend it, you all have to give us permission, and we do have to amend the budget. So it looks like it's a 10,000% increase. It's actually a 0% increase from what we did at the beginning of this fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions on general government? Moving over to planning and zoning. Again, you'll see that additional full-time employee itemized here. We do have the $35,000 that was from the CIP that you just adopted for the Heritage Master Plan. That is $35,000. We expect that project to be, I think, 60-ish. 50-ish. So we would divide that between this year and next year. So that project will start in the latter part of the year. So it'll overlap into 2 different years. That is a fund balance appropriation that we are requesting or recommending in this budget that you've got presented in front of you. Aside from that, there's pretty much no changes. Any questions in planning and zoning? Moving over to the next tab, which is public safety, is where you see your off-duty listed at 0, and we'll get to that in just a second. You also have the deputy contract, which you see the increase. And again, that total is $256,000 annually. If you remember, we went up in our tax rate for the first time, and don't quote me on this, but I want to say over 10 years, and that was solely for the additional law enforcement officer during that time.
We are getting replacement for Tommy, right?
We are. The off-duty traffic control, you all had asked us to put in the budget for next year. You do not see that in this year's budget because we did want to show you the reflective tax increase that would be relevant to the Bonds Grove, Waxhaw, Marvin with the off-duty and the cost of the construction and all that goes along with that. So you'll see that in just a second. Any questions on that? Moving over to the next tab, which is transportation. This is one of the weirder ones, and I'll spend a couple more minutes on this one. If you recall, there's this kind of giant overarching rule that we have with PAL bill that we have to spend PAL bill dollars within 10 allocations, which breaks down to 5 years. We also have this other overarching rule that we have to administer from a staff level that we can only spend PAL bill dollars on certain things, primarily roadways. And there's, the list is a lot more stringent than that, but we basically take our PAL bill dollars and the vehicle tax revenue, the vehicle tag revenue, and try to balance the transportation budget 100% with those 2 revenues. We're not putting any, we're putting in very minimal general fund dollars to front transportation purposes, and that's only the items that cannot be paid through PAL bill, like your CRTPO dues. You can't use PAL bill dollars for that, or the roundabout streetlights. So when you see this budget for transportation, it should pretty much mirror the revenues that you're receiving for PAL bill and the vehicle tags, which there's maybe $10,000 off. So if you're looking at this, you'll see a $30,000 appropriation for our engineer. And this is just what we budget. We don't know how much it's going to cost. If we need to do a budget amendment, we will. Then you see a large portion of the $167,864 for preventative maintenance on the tracker sheet. Again, this may change, and we may not spend it on that based on what the pavement condition survey comes back at, but we've got it earmarked here for that purpose, and we can amend that throughout the year if things change based on the pavement condition survey. Or if we don't use it, it goes back into fund balance restricted for streets.
On the roundabout maintenance, that's these 3 roundabouts here?
Yes,
Okay, just these 3.
yes. Aside from that, there's really no changes in here. We do have 30,000 for emergency repairs. That number is pretty variable. It ranges anywhere from potholes that form to culverts that might have sunk in, or storm drains that have collapsed, storm drains that need cleaned out. We're actually getting ready to bring to you all a lot of repairs that are needed in the next couple of weeks. Just things are getting older, they're starting to fail, we're starting to see some kind of deferred maintenance over the years, and we've got to get them addressed, so we're gonna have to start beefing up this preventative, emergency repair line item. Any questions on that? All right, moving over to Parks and Recreation. The only real impactful thing here is, again, Marvin Day is listed at $30,000. We do not have any revenues in the budget for Marvin Day, so we are budgeting 100% of the cost of Marvin Day. There was a recommendation from the subcommittee today to tone back on the fireworks. Did we want to pull it to 20?
That did not happen in the subcommittee today.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I thought.
Yeah, we did not talk about that.
Okay, sorry. My fault, misunderstood. So 30,000 is listed there for Marvin Day, and then the 50,000 is listed in the floodplain wetland study from the CIP, which again was the fund balance appropriation. Any questions on that? All right, moving over to solid waste. Again, there's a 0 increase in solid waste fees to residents. In order to minimize the impact, the tax impact, we did start itemizing out staff salaries. So you'll see just the staff salaries that affect, that are impacted by the solid waste, which would be Public Works, myself, and Finance. Any questions on that? All right, moving over to Public Works. Again, this is our newest department. We're still working on the formation of their operations and how they're flowing. So we've got a lot of things in here. They do a lot of work for us. They keep our properties and our facilities maintained and beautiful, presentable for the public and safe. So we've got several things in here that you've seen throughout the years: mulch, landscaping, material, fertilizer, chemicals, small equipment, staining, painting, uniforms, emergency repair equipment needed, material supplies. And then he also has the used truck in here as well that we've mentioned a couple of times. And then a bigger expense is the removal of some dead wood trees from Marvin Eford Park. Does anyone have any questions on Public Works?
Well, in general, do we have insurance on the trucks?
We do.
Where does it fall in?
It falls under general government.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yep, that's around $15,000 a year. I mean, a year, if I remember correctly. That's not just that's for all of our facilities.
Okay.
I think that's right.
That's
Let's-
buildings, all
Yes.
equipment and everything. All right.
That is, and that's liability as well. Sorry, I thought I could flip to it real quick. I think it's around 15,000. Property and liability is 12, we've got it in here for 12.5. This past year, it was 11.8, so we bumped it up slightly. Pending no further questions, that's the budget as you all had requested. I did want to turn it over to Jill to go over the roundabout. You all wanted to see the tax implications for that, and then she's also passed out a property tax increase model for you all to look at.
Hold on, can I go back to the budget real quick? I'm sorry. So right now, we are unbalanced by $139,276.08.
Yes, ma'am.
So we need to find that money.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can everybody look under your cushions when you get home and see?
So I also want to make sure you all understand too, we did include additional revenues in here for unassigned fund balance at $115,000. So if we would not have included that, the budget would be more at a deficit. But again, we're putting back 200, so we feel very confident in being able to put that in and then pull it back out within the next year and it not have an impact on anything that you've already seen in terms of fund balance projections.
I got it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so if we can move on to the roundabout, at the last meeting,
Do we have a separate sheet for that?
yes, yeah, we're gonna look at the big one. We can look at the big one. That's your power bill revenue and your additional revenue, the separate sheet. So at the last meeting, we talked about finding funding for the roundabout, and you had asked me to kind of look at some options, what kind of a tax increase, maybe specifically earmarked for the roundabout, or a fund balance appropriation, an unassigned fund balance appropriation. So I pretty much looked at all of the options. I tried to keep the tax increase the lowest possible in order to keep us in the green and allow us to not only pay for our interlocal share of the roundabout itself, but also the off-duty officers that Christina mentioned when we were going over the budget. So as you know, our agreement for the roundabout, what we have left to pay, you can see, you'll see it says NC/village share of the roundabout. We have a $64,000 share to be paid, not this coming fiscal year, but the 25 to 26. Then we have the lump sum of the construction to be paid, estimate fiscal year 27 to 28 at almost 500,000. So, and then we've got budgeted 250,000 for potential overruns that we could also have to pay a share of through this agreement. So worst case, you're looking at about 800,000 left that we have to contribute for that roundabout. And that does not include about $400,000 over the next 4 years for you to have off-duty officers at that intersection to keep it safe. So we're looking at 1.2 million that I had to find for you. I'm happy to say that I believe that a 1.5 cent tax increase will pay for all of this. I didn't really have to go higher because 1 was not enough, but 1.5 was. And so going there gave me the revenue I needed for both the roundabout and the officers.
So I need to be clear, and everyone that's listening needs to be clear. When you make that that recommendation of 1.1.5 cent, that is just for the roundabout and the officers. It does not include the $140,000 deficit that we are here.
Correct.
Okay.
One question I have, that 1.5 cents, that's projected over how many years to raise that amount of money?
So I knew you were going to ask that, John. So I actually have 2 models. I have one where it's not necessarily in perpetuity, but my projections only go through fiscal year 2030, and I have that 1.5 cent increase going all the way through. I do have another model where I only had it for the next 3 fiscal years, since the roundabout is set to be completed in the 4th fiscal year. And I can plug in and put that on the screen for you guys to see. What I will tell you is with the 1.5 cent, as you can see by the handout I gave you, it's not that we never go into the red in any area, but we have other revenue sources and reserves like this tax increase to offset it, where we can stay in the green. As soon as let's call it a sunset for lack of a better word, but as soon as I stop that 1.5% tax increase beginning in the year that the roundabout is supposed to be finished, we do start to deplete some of the reserves that we're building up through the vehicle tag fee. But we don't necessarily run into a problem until fiscal year 29 to 30, where it's currently showing in the red.
And these numbers that we're talking about and the 1.5 cents, that is just based on our current valuations. That doesn't take into any account, because we can't take that into account. We don't know what it's going to be. We have to
Yes.
balance our budget for this coming fiscal year before that information will be out.
I
correct?
did add a 3% increase per year just as a moderate increase. New homes that are being built and added to our tax base, but it does not include any
County
revals.
tax valuation we've been
Correct.
hearing about of 30%. So there's the likelihood that if we do this now and the 1.5%, once that valuation comes in, we're going to have to kind of reassess all of this again at that point, because we'll be taking into account that 1.5% based upon whatever new valuations come out next year.
1.5 cents.
Cents,
One
yeah,
and a
just,
half.
yeah.
And to be clear too, just so we don't forget, when she takes this model out to 30, I don't think it's our position that we say that there's a sunset, because that's for another council to
Well-
sign up for or to.
I want to remind you all too, that you've got two other intersections that have been identified on a critical intersection
Right.
that I think the recommendation is going to be another roundabout. So just keep that in mind, that that's coming down the line as well. But in terms of what you're saying, it would be, what we would do in that case is look at the revenue neutral. And so if the council decides to do a revenue neutral rate, we would figure out what that same revenue would be at that time based on the valuations.
Or something in
Yeah.
between that accounts for whatever new
Yes.
issues come up between now and then.
And because I was asked, I did look at not using a tax increase at all and just doing a fund balance appropriation from unassigned fund balance. I do have to tell you that I 100% cannot make this recommendation to you simply because I would, I'm going to plug in.
I just want y'all to be able to see the deficits based on her modeling.
No, but.
Didn't we see the deficits last time?
No.
No, because she changed it.
You were looking at the fund balance. She's actually got it in the tracker sheet, the road tracker sheet.
You got to remember, we're teetering on putting ourselves in a
Real pickle.
real pickle, where I'm sure when we gave the presentation for the GO bonds, the League of Municipalities looked at us and said, you have a strong standing. Because of some of these things that we're considering of backsliding on this and minimal, oh my God, the minimal tax increase. We're putting ourselves, well, we're not in a good position for that. We don't have a strong standing compared to any of the other local governments or with the League of Municipalities. We as a council, we signed up for this. And we have to, I understand that there's people out there that have their opinions on not raising taxes and you're just squandering money on one, this, that, and the other. I think if you really come in and you sat down, you scheduled a time to sit down with not only one of the council members, but with Jill or with Christina, that we crunch numbers. We go excessive in crunching numbers. And when you start talking about this model that you're going to talk about, we're borderline just going, we don't really care about our community long-term, but we're just going to sacrifice not doing anything. And that's not a good place. And I just caution the council, when you make your decisions, make it on what you feel is right for the community today, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, because
So I started with a 20% allocation from unassigned fund balance. That's that highlighted green box, 350,000. That is based on our current fund balance, which is we have pulled from it this fiscal year, so it currently sits about 1.75 mil. So 350,000 is what that calculated out to. And without boring you, I'm just going to kind of scroll down and show you all of the red. So that 20% fund balance appropriation doesn't really get us very far. By fiscal year 27 and 28, when that big construction payment is due for the roundabout, I would have already run out of that fund balance allocation, because we're also being asked to pay $400,000 over 4 years for those officers to help traffic at that critical intersection. So I'm not comfortable even doing 20%, I'm certainly not comfortable going any higher than that because as we discussed at your last meeting, we have a lot of grants that are reimbursable, but I have to pay the expenses up front and float that cash and wait to get it back. So I can't in good conscience even recommend a 20% allocation from unassigned fund balance without putting myself in a position where I can't meet the obligations potentially that we already have on the table. I put it in here to show you that it's not a viable option, and I have to recommend against that versus a tax increase.
I have one question. That 175,000 for widening 16, is that our share or is that?
That's an estimate, sir, and you do not have an agreement in place yet for that. But that would normally, that's an estimate of what our share would look like if we do enter into an interlocal agreement for that.
And that's for the sidewalks, right? Yeah, and that was what we discussed several years ago when they were going to do it the first time.
I have something to say that everybody's listening. If they're listening tonight, you're thinking that we're spending all your money. That's probably true. But the place that really winds up to be is a General Assembly, because they have not made enough money to give the DOT any money, and we wind up get to pay for the DOT and their work that they need to do. Simple as that.
Well, I mean, I think at the end of the day, based on the feedback you've gotten from residents about how important they feel the roundabout is, as well as officers at that intersection, my job is to really tell you how financially you can meet those requests of your residents, whether, the residents like the answer or not, but it would have to be a tax increase to cover the cost of putting deputies there for the next 4 years until that's done, like we did at the last roundabout, and then also paying our large portion of that construction.
So then your recommendation is a tax increase?
Yes, ma'am.
So you've got a 1.5 cent tax increase to cover the roundabout and $400,000 of off-duty officers. And how much do we need for the $140,000 deficit in the budget?
Well,
That's going to tell you right here.
that should be 1 cent. That would cover it.
1 cent?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we really need 2.5 cents.
Yes, ma'am.
So really the questions are, it's really not a question in
It's not a
terms of
question.
tax increase, but I guess the biggest question is, do we want to do the off-duty of $400,000?
I'm gonna say the same thing as I said with the one over here. To say no, I'm the one that's gonna have to, if someone gets killed on that intersection, I'm gonna be the one that has to lay there at night and go, I was too afraid to vote for a half a cent and that cost that person's life. Well, I'm not afraid to do that and whatever it takes, because I don't want a life lost. I don't want a wreck down there. I don't think it's a question. We did the right thing here. Did it hurt? Yes, it hurt, but it was the right thing to do. Listen, all of this isn't fun stuff. But I want to go back to what you said, for what people said. I got to be honest with you, and I'm being sincere in this. I haven't heard anybody say anything. I have not heard anybody say anything. I've heard that people are talking on next door, but that means absolutely nothing to me, and it shouldn't to this council. What should matter is your HOA president's coming in. It should matter that your constituents are coming in and scheduling time and making, look who we have. Where are people at? I haven't heard anything yet. I'm sorry. And the only way to hear people is to have people come in and tell us that. I hear rumblings of it, but nobody's approached me about it. Not one person has approached me about that roundabout. Now, I'm going to clear something else up about the roundabout. For everyone that says, oh my God, we were the ones that got the roundabout moved up from 2030, 2031 to where it is today. We petitioned, I know it's I'm on CRTP or it's the CRTPO board, and we petitioned to get it moved up. So for those who say that we didn't want it, or we don't want this, or we don't want it, we want safety. I want that one to be done, and I'd like soon thereafter, to Christina's point, to have one at Marvin Road and Joe Carr. So,
Just to clarify my comments, I was going off of the update that Councilman Barisic and Mark Elise gave about that largely attended coffee with council after the Geo bond election, where they did get a lot of feedback about the roundabout. That's what I meant when I referred to that.
I got you, but again, that's one moment
Mhm.
of truly a handful of people. And again, I'm not discrediting that because that's what Coffee with Council's for.
Mhm.
But
Well, I'm going to say that I agree with you on one hand and disagree with you on the other. I was 100% in agreement about putting officers down here at Marvin Road because it was a bad sight line. It was a dangerous intersection. I traverse this intersection multiple times a week. You have a clear sight. If anybody gets in an accident down there, it's because they're being impatient, not because it's an unsafe intersection. It's busy, I agree. But I feel like that, and after looking at the data that we got, accidents versus traffic and just congestion, the main problem is congestion. And I don't know that I want to spend $400,000 to make people's lives easier that traverse through our village from Waxhaw. Because I don't feel like our residents need to pay for that. It's not their fault that a neighboring community uses our roads through our town as a convenience to get to work. Now, if that was a dangerous intersection you couldn't see and it was hard to get out because you couldn't see, then I'd have a different opinion on it. But it's a matter of impatience. And, you know, where does our responsibility end? I feel like it ends with safety with a bad situation for safety. It doesn't end with holding somebody's hand who's too impatient to wait at the stop sign. I think that's the responsibility of the drivers out there, and that's kind of where I'm at on that, because that's a big number, and our citizens have to foot that bill.
Andy?
I would disagree with that, though, to some extent, because I happen to live down the Waxhaw Marvin side. And what I can say is that in some cases, the sight lines aren't an issue. In other cases, the sight lines are. So if you're coming down Bonds Grove Church, taking that left onto Waxhaw Marvin Road, you cannot see the cars that are coming. And that's an area that unfortunately is blinker optional. Some people use them, some people don't. And what I would say is that if you look at the number of accidents that are happening there, they're at an increasing rate. And, you know, the other thing about the officers, I understand your point about all of those folks are coming through Waxhaw, but when we were putting them at the other roundabouts, it wasn't because all those people coming from Waxhaw were coming to work in Marvin.
I agree with that.
They were going right through to Charlotte. So it's the same traffic there now that you're talking about that was handling the roundabouts before.
Sparking thought, because what we did temporarily, we put a no left turn. That's what we're saying, we do right turn only at that, as you're coming around where it doesn't continue on Bonds Grove, because if you're going that way,
During
gonna
peak
get stuck
hours?
at peak
That's a-
hours, you're gonna get stuck.
It's a good idea. Put in a
But
left
we don't
turn
control
during
those
peak hours there
that-
from Bonds Grove to
You don't get a vote.
Waxhaw.
That's a good idea.
That is that was one of your better ones, Joe. I'll have to give you that because
I'm
that
just
makes a
saying-
lot of
Hang on,
sense.
hang on, let me
If-
write it
if
down.
we-
Joe, good idea. One, I got it.
If we can get the community to understand it, because there are some homes there, and they've got to figure out a different way to get home if they're gonna plan on coming that way at the critical time. And it's only a certain time. We may get a lot of pushback, because we have a huge neighborhood, a decent sized neighborhood that's just beyond there. But
Well, they can go back to Providence and make a right and go to Waxhaw that way. I mean, it's
Yeah.
people going to Waxhaw.
And again, are they gonna listen? Are they gonna pay attention to we have a sign there that says you can't make a left? You almost have to have an officer there to
Well,
enforce that.
if there's a no left turn and they get hit making a left turn, then I guess then who's at fault?
I do want to tell you that while you've been speaking, I did make a copy of this sheet. I lowered the tax increase from 1.5 to 1 cent and removed the off-duty officers at that intersection, essentially taking away that 400,000 if you do take away the officers, and that's what you all want, and that 400,000 goes away, a 1 cent tax increase would, in my opinion, be enough to get you through the construction of that roundabout.
And did we consider didn't we discuss about the time frame that we wouldn't actually put them in there till September? So we would have a gap in there
In the first year, yeah.
and then it goes to the end of the school years and then it's done. So did you?
And do we have the option to only run them during school and not during the summer? Because that would at least save some money and the traffic is exponentially lighter
I mean, that's what we did.
non-school.
That's what we did up here.
That's what we did
Did we?
there.
Okay.
We
I thought
do.
we did it full.
We put it in as you see it, year round, but we can go back to the drawing board and take that out. It's gonna reduce it slightly, but not a whole lot.
Big of a difference.
Yeah,
Again, we're talking pennies here.
10%. Well, 10% is 10.
It would reduce it about 8,000 per month, 7,800 per month that you choose not to have officers there. So if it's just 3 months of the summer, you're looking at 21,000 a year in savings.
It's really gonna end up being like 2 months, because you're gonna go a couple weeks into June, and you're
Mhm.
gonna start, and so it's really gonna be 2 months.
So maybe 15,000 you would save.
But if we did the 1.5, we would be completely covered for it, the roundabout and.
And the
And
officers.
the officers. And if there's anything left over, it can go into fund balance
It
at the end of the
could,
year.
it could, but I would rather well, I mean,
Keep it
that's
in-
for you all to decide, but depending on what roads we are able to take on and the condition of roads and what maintenance we need to do, that's for you all to decide if you want to put it towards road maintenance or you want to put it back in a fund balance.
But the spirit of the whole thing is to do the 1.5 and it completely covers the roundabout and the officers.
Which it should,
Yes.
which it should.
That's.
And that is to start this fiscal year, this coming fiscal year, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you stop mamming me?
Sure.
That's like the 8th time.
We got 2 minutes.
Okay. You don't need to vote on this tonight. We can
Mm-mm.
mull over this.
Mhm.
Just one other question.
our
So
next
are
budget
we
meeting.
expecting when there is a revaluation, again, is that this coming year or does that hit the next year?
The tax increase would be in next year.
Okay.
And we don't need a vote on this, but the next budget presentation is for adoption. I think we're actually,
Should be June.
no, I'm sorry, it's
Should be
May.
June.
It's the end of May.
We have our normal
have one
budget
more.
work session at the beginning of the month, and then we have our work
You're right, sorry.
session
Yes.
the end of the month at 6 o'clock to adopt the budget. Because we never want to get into May again, ever.
No, ma'am.
That's 9.
Okay. Okay, thank you, guys.
Good job, Jill.
Yeah, good
Thanks
job.
for.
Thank you.
I know that's a lot of hard work. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to make a motion to adjourn the Village Council Budget Work Session meeting at 5:59 PM.
All of those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Get a quick minute break before we go into our 6 o'clock meeting here.
I mean, the money we spend on this and it's, so we appease the people who want this roundabout that, honest to gosh.
I mean, I just, at 400,000 is a lot to swallow for this particular. That one
Yeah.
was a different story. This one.
Bob, you didn't put your blinker on, your beeper didn't beep or nothing. That doesn't help.
If we did the left turn during peak time, we don't do this. Because there's no reason for people to have to. And that's the only thing. That it be. I moved here at 17 and I had to look straight. I started from 15, 16. Okay. Yeah, that's the way. Well, we can have access to it.
She didn't have a, we're gonna set that little about it, so remember the, when we served, there's, it was. You just have it. I don't know why. It's 50 weeks. I got her credit. With 1 million. She said she could be. Yeah, not good, they're not good.
Yeah, ice water.
But they're not using. So I don't know. The ones that I think say that public space. Stop on. And I mean, they used city utilities and they still.
Yeah. Nope.
All the benefits. They couldn't live here.
Nope.
That's your.
Yeah. So that's all.
What's that?
Actually.
So you can say I'm good?
Sometimes you grow. I'm so.
Are you kidding me? Wow. Do you?
I know.
I need a chair for her. You need to. Oh my Lord, Jamie. Goodness.
Here's her bag, I treat my dog.
You don't know how expensive that is. Christine, you're making my Louis Vuitton.
She checked.
I'm gonna text her right now. Text her right.
How's she doing, Jamie? I haven't seen her lately. She's. I turned on.
I would never ask these questions, I just have been answered.
What's going on?
Oh, this is just,
Oh, that's what 20 years.
yeah.
Okay. There's been an issue I'm tired of hearing about. Huh? That goes with the, this goes with it. This goes with it.
Sorry about that. Just got some information. Need to review. Why is this not? Okay. There we go. All right. I'd like to call the Village Council regular meeting to order April 9th, 2024. I show the time at 6:08 PM. I show we have a full quorum. First off, we're going to go right into the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any changes we need to note? on
Yeah,
that?
so moving to consent agenda, consider adoption of Village of Marvin sidewalk policy. We're going to revise unfinished business number 3 to be discussion and consideration of stormwater analysis for Marvin Eford Park and the Marvin Loop Trail. We're going to add to consent, consider entering agreement with Centralina Regional Council to conduct floodplain technical assistance work not to exceed $4,000 and authorize the manager to execute the agreement. We're going to add closed session to recess into closed session pursuant to NCGS 143-318.11A6 to discuss personnel. That's all I have.
When is that? After which one? The closed session?
Closed session's at the end. It should be on there. Everything should be updated.
Anything else? Anything else from any other council members? Thank you, Kim. I'll need a motion to approve the adoption as amended.
So moved.
Further discussion?
Uh,
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Let's just keep flipping back on me. All right. Next up, we have the adoption of the previous minutes. You guys have a chance to read those. Any questions?
Yes and no.
You read it, but no questions.
Correct.
Anyone else? I gotta be on top of it. All right, thank you. I'll need a motion to approve the previous minutes.
So moved.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next up, we have Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're going to move right into public comment period. Just a quick note, if you do want to speak, you needed to sign. Did anyone sign up for public comment?
Yes.
So we'll give you 3 minutes. There's no dialogue back and forth between council, just a friendly reminder. So if you come up, just introduce yourself and where you live. And you're free to talk for 3 minutes. Kim, you got the timer? And we'll go from there. Who do we have first?
First up is Lauren Thomas, 3025 Groves Edge Lane.
Okay.
Hey there, Lauren Thomas, 3025 Groves Edge Lane. I know y'all are tired of seeing my face and I understand. I would like to propose that feasibility be the key word in trail decision-making in the future, be it a sidewalk in a right-of-way, a bike lane in a share road, or a bridge over a floodway. A feasibility process that weighs the entire feasibility of a trail segment on a case-by-case basis. You could weigh the community support, the feasibility of gaining an easement from a property owner, the potential flood risk, the financial costs to maintain that trail, the intensive staff time to gain that, likelihood of additional cost to federal regulatory requirements. So the reason I say this, there are trail segments that are in the master plan that are low-hanging fruit. And then there are trail segments that are regulatory landmines and are so out of proportion to what is feasible and involve so many federal agencies, not just FEMA, but also Army Corps of Engineers and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that could make it, just not worth pursuing. So without all the resources, it may not be feasible to do a particular trail. Compliance with floodplain management ordinances is required in order for citizens to be eligible for federal flood insurance through NFIP. FEMA has the power to place non-compliant communities on probation and impose a surcharge on all flood insurance policies. So suspension of any kind of flood insurance to homeowners is a big deal. So I remain hopeful that each of you understands the floodplain violation issue that happened in the Marvin Creek Connector Trail and understand it enough to reallocate the funds from the Marvin Creek Connector Trail to the Tullamore and Amber Meadows trails that are also in floodplains before the NFIP floodplain audit. This is the urgent issue, in my opinion, and I just hope that that's something that you guys understand the weight of that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up.
Next up is Jennifer Castellucci, 9683 Saddle Avenue.
All right. Good evening. You guys know me as the chair of the Parks Rec and Greenway Board, and I'm also an impacted homeowner on the Marvin Creek Connector Trail. And in both capacities, I have considered the issues raised by these in depth. This morning in the PRNG meeting, I gave a detailed presentation explaining in part the role of FEMA in this controversy, and for the benefit of those who were unable to watch that this morning because live stream wasn't operating, I'd like to take this opportunity to reiterate a few points and to correct what seems to be some misconceptions. There's a lot of talk going around about not having the appropriate FEMA permits for this project, which seems to imply that we're missing permits from FEMA itself. That is impossible because FEMA does not actually issue permits. In the context of floodplain administration, FEMA's role is confined to the National Flood Insurance Program. FEMA establishes the flood hazard zones and the appropriate building practices for development within those zones. In order for homeowners to acquire flood insurance, which is required by all mortgage lenders, whenever you build in a flood hazard zone, the municipality must then adopt and enforce FEMA's building standards for construction in those zones. This is done through the zoning permits submitted to the Village of Marvin and processed by the Village of Marvin. These do not go to FEMA. The only permits the village needs for compliance with FEMA are those issued properly by the Village of Marvin itself. The penalty for non-compliance at the individual level is no flood insurance for you or an extremely high rate of insurance. In order for there to be a community-wide penalty for non-compliance, it would have to be gross, systemic, widespread, and to go without remedy after notices of violation from FEMA. At this point, to my knowledge and belief, we have not received one single notice of violation from FEMA in spite of this particular trail issue being brought to their attention. A few other points to make and reiterate is that there is a difference between floodplains and floodways. Building within the floodplains, the wider entity is entirely permittable. Otherwise, the state of Florida would be uninhabited. This issue is not so much how you build or what you build, but how and what your insurance cost will be in the end. The only issue here with this trail with regard to FEMA is one that is easily remedied by the actual filing of a proper permit on our behalf. Some forms of development in floodplains are actually encouraged, particularly those like trails and recreation areas that maintain the drainage features. And floodways are more restrictive, requiring a no-rise certificate by an engineer, not by FEMA. However, even developments that cause rise in flood elevation can proceed so long as a letter of map revision is filed. I believe that by rerouting this trail, I think that we have options to complete it without encroaching on the floodway at all, thus nullifying all FEMA compliance issues with this trail. And while there may still be other environmental impacts that need to be sorted, I'm confident that they can be. If those solutions are actively pursued and obtained and the trail built in compliance with them, all objection on environmental standings are moot. Thank you.
Thank you.
No one else has signed up.
No one
to
else
speak.
signed up? All right, thank you for commenting there. Next up, we have presentations, reports and updates. Manager's report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a couple of things. I'm going to pass these photos down. It's just 2 photos. You'll just have to pass them down and looking around. 2 trees need to be removed at Marvin Everett Park. Just wanted to show them to you because I know everyone is big into, tree preservation, but they are dead. Our arborist has come out and looked at both of them and they need to be removed. So we're going to do it, take care of it. Just wanted to let y'all know and let the community know so that when they saw those coming down, they were aware. The playground is now officially opened. I think we have the toddler lot's still closed. The toddler lot had some ADA issues and we are looking to open that this week. So that should be opened up and ready for play. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is roundabout planting on the 3rd roundabout has been completed. There's one minor issue. They're lacking lantanas in the planting. They are looking to get those done pretty quickly, but just in case you guys drive by and see that it's missing that is complete minus that one little exception. And that's all I have.
Any questions from council? Thank you, Christina. Planners report.
Just have 2 items to update you guys on. First one being that the Heritage at Marvin, the Jones Homes development, should be breaking ground if they haven't already. We had their pre-con meeting last week. They have received all outside agency approvals. They had the pre-con with DEQ, all that stuff. So you'll start seeing some construction and stuff moving on that property. They closed last week as well. So just wanted to update you guys on that. And then the second one, my monthly MDO update on the Marvin Development Ordinance. Just wanted to make sure you guys were aware again that Planning Board will be reviewing this next week, making their final recommendation, which therefore at your April meeting, you will be calling for a public hearing. And we will hold the public hearing at the May regular meeting for consideration and adoption of the Marvin Development Ordinance. So just wanted to remind you guys of that. So if there's any other questions or comments on those, just feel free to, reach out to me and let me know.
Hunter, refresh my memory. Jones Homes, that development, you know how they're selling? Are they only going internal with their real estate agents?
I'm not sure on that.
Okay.
I know, I can ask. I know their timeline is
It's not
that,
important. It's
yeah.
just, I got an odd call from an agent and saying that they're hard to work with. And I'm like, well, it's available.
to my
You
understanding,
walk up, I
they
guess.
do contract with certain agents to list their specific homes. But I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Sorry. Hearing none, we'll move on. Roads report. Christina?
I just wanted to mention that the pavement condition survey is currently underway. I don't know exactly when they're going to start, but we are under contract. So people in the community may see our engineers going out and assess road conditions over the next month or 2. That's all I have.
Okay, my computer's talking to me. It just started talking. All right, thank you. Deputies report. Is Tommy still? Yeah, I believe. Yeah, that's right. For saving a life. All right.
Saving a life.
So I looked at these, what his report was. It tends to be similar to the last, nothing really earth-shattering as far as speeders on the road. That seems to be the case. So any questions? I don't know who I guess would direct them to at this point, but just move on if there's no comments or questions. All right, hearing none, I'll move on to planning board report.
We covered two things. We basically covered one of which will be heard tonight, the public hearing on the accessory dwelling on Saddle Avenue. And we saw some of elevations and such on that. The other thing we talked about was of the Marvin Development Ordinance. The planning board went over the table of uses for the Heritage District. And, you know, it's a pretty boilerplate, generic thing that had a whole lot of uses. And that is what we were going over as to what would be acceptable, what, you know, in a heritage district, and specifically Marvin. And there was highlighted, somebody had brought up and had seen the word townhouses. And I think some people have run with that because it was mentioned. Nothing's been approved. We talked about nothing about townhouses or anything of that nature. It was just looking at a table of uses and what we would approve and not approve. So with that, that was a very interesting conversation. That was regarding Article 8, and we'll be carrying forward on this next meeting too.
So I'd like to take this opportunity to hammer this to the community that want to spin whatever we're talking about. And Hunter, I'm going to give you the opportunity to correct me if I'm wrong, but basically you have to have everything on the use for a community. However, it has to fit in a separate special district, a district that is assigned for it. If we don't have that district, that's an opportunity where we could, or future councils could say no, correct?
In short, yes. I mean, like,
Not if we don't have the district, if we
Well,
don't have the use.
correct.
Sorry.
That table of uses is very, very detailed. There's a lot of uses identified. There are certain uses by state that are protected by the general state statutes that we cannot prohibit them, but we can make it hard for them to ever be a thing.
Such as?
Adult establishments are one.
What did you say?
Adult establishments.
Establishments, okay.
And there's a few others, I think, regarding family care facilities and so on. We're in the process of finishing up an FAQ that will kind of identify some of those for just to push out so the public can be aware. It's also an opportunity for them to come to the public hearing in May, because we will have a detailed presentation on all of this. But getting back to your question, the more uses we have identified, it's easier where if a use that fit that mold came in, we then can identify them. And if they're not permitted, they're not permitted. If they are permitted in a separate district and that property is not zoned that district, they can always apply to rezone. But that is a legislative decision by the village council. And that is something that, and there's the land use plan goes in with that. There's a lot of other factors that go in. So does that clarify?
Yeah, I just kind of want to reiterate, hammer this issue because it's going to be spun down the road where, well, it already is being spun. And if you missed one of the meetings, maybe you'll hear it at this meeting, but I think we should keep talking about it to make sure people understand what we're up against. A lot of it is state driven and we have to address it, and we're addressing it in the way we address it.
Correct.
So it's you know until you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Common theme.
All right, thank you. PR&G board report.
So we just had our meeting this morning, and wow, I have to really give it to Jennifer Castellucci because she did an incredible job researching a lot of this floodplain to help to educate her fellow board members on the PRG. And what you saw her do in 3 minutes really took her a full 30 minutes and was as complete and accurate as it was when she did it here. So she did a great job doing that. I think there was an understanding as they were considering, you know, making a recommendation to council about what to do with that Marvin Creek Preserve connector. I think it helped them to make a more informed decision about it one way or another. So I just wanted to give some props to her for a great job there. We also talked, you've heard us talk a little bit about a tree nursery, and I remember me having heartache on the PRG board at times, and council too, when you see the cost that sometimes we have to put out just to get screening trees or things like that. They can be very expensive. Of course, the height of them makes a big difference. So they've been exploring some different ways that we could potentially create a tree nursery, either at the near the community gardens by the park, so that we could kind of start to grow some of our own trees and some different methods for doing that. The intent for us in doing that was we wanted to find ways to save money so that, you know, the village's funds could be invested in other ways than just trees. There are some other avenues that we have to get trees and so forth. I know that we had conversations with Public Works had conversations with our urban tree forester, Keith, to talk about those. And some of the feedback that we got is that while it sounds like a good idea, even just developing, implementing that kind of tree nursery and then the ongoing work, it may not actually save you money. And because that was the intent of why we kind of started going down that road to begin with, we've kind of put a pause on it for now. You know, so what the recommendation is from the urban tree forester was, you know, to look at that as something that you do in the budgeting process now. You know, we saw how tight things were in our budget meeting, but that, you know, that's probably at least short term, the better way to go. You know, we discussed that and just kind of put a pause on that. One other item that we had is we had a proposed Eagle Scout project. I believe, I don't know if that's the same one there, but we discussed a project that was proposed to put some signage in the village park, Marvin Eford Park, for the trails, some identifying things and stuff like that. He showed some renderings that we were presented with that looked really nice, you know, kept with the branding of the park that we have and so forth. And we made a recommendation about that for council to consider, allowing them to move forward with that project. But that was kind of the summary of PRG today.
John, I'm gonna follow up on something you said in your first piece, that Jen had a great conversation with her team and the board. You said at the end that they came up with a recommendation. Can you share what their recommendation was?
Yeah, well, would we do that when we get to that in here,
Well,
or?
but this has to deal specifically with that. Because I know we'll deal with it later, but I would like to know what that.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
The
Just
board-
so it's accurate.
The board's recommendation was to keep the easement for now, but encourage the council to consider the cost of the studies needed for the connector trail, the usage that the trail would have, as well as the connectivity the trail would provide.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
And just, I would say it wasn't unanimous, but, or did it, well, it ended up being.
The motion itself, when it was proposed, was unanimous, but the board was evenly split during their discussions.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Moving on to event planning report. Tyler?
Yeah, so Marvin Day planning update. We all have a meeting on Monday, April 15th at 11 a.m. Everyone has responded. That'll be staff, council, volunteers. That'll be, what we'll go over is our emergency action plan. We'll go over day of duties, what the day's going to look like moving forward. And we will hopefully pass out t-shirts, parking passes, and kind of give you your packet of things that you'll need for the day. What the day's going to look like. Event's going to begin at 4 p.m. The kids' fun zone's going to be open. We have 2 bounce houses. We'll have some really good vendors like our face painter, hair tinsel, our balloon animal maker. We'll have some really good booths inside the barn. We will have, you know, our people over at Marsh. We'll have some animal exhibits. We'll have urban forestry out there. And that's just at 4. The Breakfast Club will be playing music starting at 6:15. They'll come on and they'll play. And we will have 3 really good food trucks, a coffee truck. We will have a beverage vendor from Americana in Monroe will be set up out there.
Sunny and 72 degrees.
It's going to be sunny. It's going to be a beautiful day. It's just going to be nice. And yeah, following the concert, we're going to have a fireworks show. That'll be about 9:30 for now. So yeah, it's looking pretty fun. That's the details. Plan on, we have very limited parking at the park. So if you're going to attend, plan to ride our shuttle from Marvin Ridge High School to the park. And that'll be running every 15 minutes or so on a constant loop. So it'll drop you off, bring you back to your car, easy access. Any questions on Marvin Day? I know we'll go over a lot on Monday. So
The lobster truck,
No,
we're gonna have a dunk tank.
no. Do you want it? I can arrange for it for
No.
you.
we can get you.
No.
Are you
No,
sure?
I got
You're
the
not sure?
answers. I'm disappointed in the first answer, but not the second. No. Thank you.
Perfect. Well,
Thanks, Tyler.
nothing else on that. Other events coming up, 5K on June 1st. Stargazing event on June 12th. That will be a registered event. You will have to register online. That'll be going up in the coming weeks. You also will register for the 5K on June 1st. That's all I got coming up. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Tyler.
Any other questions? Thank you, Tyler. All right. Coffee with council debrief.
There actually has not been a coffee with council since the last meeting.
Okay, but because we're on the subject, the upcoming one, I'm looking at,
On Thursday.
is it this Thursday?
It is.
No, I was looking at another date, sorry. Give me 1 second here. It's, okay, so coffee with oh, it's a work session on the 25th of April.
That's got Jamie and you.
We have a work
On the
session that
11th.
day.
Yeah, no, it's not the 11th, it's the 25th. We have a work session on that day. Okay. All right. I got two meetings confused on that date, so. Okay,
You good?
I'm good. I just thought we were on the subject. I thought it was a coffee with council, but I'm corrected here. Very good. It's not much on WUMA. WUMA is up next. We had our meeting. It's good to see everyone. Unfortunately, Waxaw has yet to show up in the last couple of meetings, correct?
Jason has been very occupied with his work, so he has not had a lot of time. That's
But
what
they
I
don't have
found
another
out.
representative.
I guess they haven't found an alternate, but that's what's going on with that
Yeah.
situation.
So basically, we talked about in new business there, build to rent communities. But that's becoming an issue and how we address that. We even got into squatters, issues with squatter laws and title theft in North Carolina.
Just real quick, I just want to make it very clear that we've had a lot of discussion about this, the Airbnb stuff, and unfortunately, the state has pretty much tied our hands in disallowing those things. The only entity that has any teeth in enforcing that is your HOAs. Municipalities, whether you're Charlotte or Waxhaw or Marvin, we can't say that you can't have an Airbnb. Cannot distinguish that from any other type of rental that is guaranteed by the General Assembly. So I just want to make that very clear for everybody to understand. It is something that is worrisome in neighborhoods. The only thing you can do is have your HOA prohibit that kind of activity in your neighborhood. Again, same thing.
It's, I mean,
It's limited use, and there's case law like that. You can regulate the use for residential is residential, so you can prohibit.
yeah, I was trying to explain that how, what prevents someone like me having a couple rentals that I rent out, but I just got bigger and had more rentals. That's essentially what these corporations, but it is, my argument was the corporation that's on the New York Stock Exchange is American Home Rentals. That's a business. And I would think you would need a license to run a business in our village. That was my argument for that. And that's the only path I could see going down. But to your point, it's already case law that, but we did talk about that.
I know in some states, they've attempted to kind of regulate that through the ability to tax them, specifically short-term rentals. I don't know if that's something that is available in North Carolina or
Yeah,
not.
usually your business license fees are set on a fixed schedule, and a lot of that's based on the state law schedules as well. It's gotten hard, and in North Carolina, they've stepped it up, and I think it was, one of the towns, they went up to the Supreme Court on it, and they'd tried some interesting regulations. It was Wilmington, I believe, and just weren't successful. And then the state laws come in and gotten some protection.
And then,
And the HOAs, oh, I'm sorry.
that's all right.
Marvin is lucky in that a lot of the HOAs are newer. So some of them do have better provisions. It gets really difficult in areas that don't have HOAs or they don't have the covenants. Makes it even harder to regulate, and that's where it can be difficult.
The other two items we discussed was the Summerfield annexation that they, were asking for a resolution. I think we talked about and possibly putting one together to support the, the takeover, that kind of.
And that's on the
thing.
consent agenda tonight.
Right. And then the final one is waiver of newspaper notice. They wanted to get us all behind that where we waive when we have to disclose someone who reads the newspaper anymore. So different ways of getting communication out on public information when we're stating something. So where that goes, I'm not sure, but it was just
Yeah, it's basically, it's just a cost incurred to the municipality that isn't getting, there's no bang for the buck, if you, to put it bluntly, because.
you'd have better effect going out on Nextdoor, quite frankly, so.
If you're making a notice, I mean, it doesn't have banking fluxes on legal notice, right?
Right.
Yeah, you have to pay for the notice in the
You
newspaper.
have to pay for the
It's
notice, get the newspaper, and towns have to pay for that notice, and again,
Yeah, the current law is it has to be published in a newspaper with general circulation in the area of which the act occurs. So it has to be a general circulation, and they define the newspaper, but it's been that way for decades. Yes, but you still have some that would be called general circulation in this area. But the municipalities and a lot of local governments would like to move that to publication, would include posting on your door, posting on your website, or other alternative means, because it really doesn't get the notice out, and they're expensive. Austin could probably.
Well, there were
tell you
some,
that.
counties and municipalities that got that waived, correct, Joe? Isn't that what I was saying?
I can't.
Certain
think that they got
municipalities are waived from.
waived
It's a
from it,
local
yeah.
bill.
Ones that have petitioned the state to be waived from it.
It's
been successful.
It's not a big issue, it's just something we talked about, that, it's coming up down.
We
the
had a
pipe.
discussion, I think, last time. My neighborhood of 44 homes, we had 3 people that. And one of them was, Paul Fitzgerald. Okay?
All right, that's all we had for WUMA report. Next up, consent agenda. I'll need a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, amended, my apologies.
So moved.
Further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next up, we have public hearing. Finally, we get to you guys here. We're getting there. Public hearing on the question of annexation pursuant to NCGS 160A-31 for parcel 06186-072 8403 Royster Run, petitioned by Avi and Lisa Bora.
Oh, right.
Bora. Okay, I got that right. All right.
So this is the next step in the annexation process to hold a public hearing. This is for 8403 Royster Run. It is a donut hole property located in the Willow Creek subdivision. The Bower family have recently moved to the area. I don't know if they're actually physically here yet, but they have closed on their property and they do wish to annex it into Marvin. They noted that our trash service was one of the reasons.
Providing a service. I was going to ask you about that.
That's why I had it prepared. Does anyone have any questions? We've been going through this process the past about a month and a half so far.
Okay.
And the formal ordinance to move forward with the annexation would be on your consent agenda at the May meeting.
Okay. Do we have to open the public hearing on this?
I thought you were doing the resolution to call for a public hearing. Did I misread that?
That was done at the last meeting.
Okay.
So we do need to open for a public hearing, right?
It's open, right?
Okay. All right. Any questions from council?
I do. So they annex in. Next month, they sell their house. New people moved in. They don't want trash service. Can they de-annex?
No.
They cannot.
The only the state legislature has the authority to change municipal boundaries in that way. De-annexations only happen by the General Assembly. And you typically can't use that sort of a reason for a de-annexation.
And I believe that's for all individual properties, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Because that happened in Mineral Springs, plus happened here, obviously, so. Any other questions?
No one has signed up to speak, but I would encourage you to ask if anyone in the audience
I was
wishes to
gonna-
speak on. the
Is anyone
annexation.
here to speak on that issue? I'd like to hear that one of the reasons they're joining is because one of the services we provide, which is great, but it's always good to have Marvin as your place of residence as well, still. All right, then we can close the public hearing then, a motion to close the
You
public
don't need a
hearing?
motion.
Okay. I keep forgetting that. All right, so any other discussion from council members before we move on? I looked at everything looks great. I was trying to find where it was. It's hard to find with just the map that you had there, exact location.
Do you want a motion to approve this?
So the ordinance won't be until the May regular meeting. We have to wait a total of 60 days to satisfy the requirements in our annexation agreements with Charlotte and Weddington.
Got it.
Okay, so nothing needs to be done? Yes, on Newtown and,
Yeah.
right. No, I saw that one, but I was still trying to figure out where that was on
Would you
that.
guys like me to pull it up on the
No.
screen and show you where it is? I can do
No,
that.
I'm good. I just, when I was reviewing it earlier today, I was questioning where that was. All right. We go to the next one? We're good? Okay. Next up, we have public hearing to consider adoption of ordinance to rezone annex petition property located at 8403 Royster Run, parcel number 06186-072.
Not on this one. Yeah, so once the property is formally annexed at your guys' May meeting, it will need to be zoned one of the village's zoning districts. So this process is, we do this every time with every annexation. So basically, we'd be rezoning the property from Union County zoning to our zoning district. Some things line up here with the MDO, but in short, the Willow Creek subdivision and the properties that are in the village of Marvin within that subdivision are currently zoned RUC, the Marvin Residential Union County District per our current ordinance. Planning board staff and planning board recommend to zone this property RUC. When the MDO is updated or approved, it will be rezoned to the corresponding new district, which would be, I think, the single-family residential 2. But all that will be done in one fell swoop. So for right now, this public hearing is just to rezone it to RUC, just in case that, the MDO gets delayed or something. And then council will adopt the ordinance for rezoning at the May meeting.
So will this be done in the consent agenda kind of simultaneously next meeting or the May meeting?
Yeah, and you will have the annexation ordinance first,
And then
just on
kinda-
the agenda because it has to be annexed before you can consider, but in order to put the zoning on, it has to be annexed. So it'll just be the second item in order on the consent agenda, and y'all can have that removed if you want to have discussion.
Anybody got any issues?
Any other questions? Comments?
Okay.
Thank you, Hunter. All right. Next up, we have public hearing for special use permit application SUP 2024-1 for an accessory dwelling unit per 151.054G located at 9683 Saddle Avenue. Public hearing,
Hunter is going to present on this one.
okay.
This is quasi judicial, isn't it?
It is.
Grab a book.
Wow.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give during this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. All right. So the village has received a special use permit application for a accessory dwelling unit in accordance with 151.054 subsection G to be located at 9683 Saddle Avenue. I will mention this is a quasi judicial hearing, so I'm going to be presenting the staff report as a evidence and give the opportunity for either the applicant or anybody in the public to also provide any statements and comments. I will also disclose that the applicant is our PR&G chair. I'm going to let Chaplain just talk a little.
Yeah, just briefly, with legislative zoning, how we have most things, you can be best friends and make a vote, but with quasi judicial, there's just a legal requirement that you have to be able to state that you're fair and impartial. And since we do know this person is on an appointed board, I would like to ask the board if each one of you can be fair and impartial with this, since you may know this person better. Can each one of you be fair and impartial in your decision?
Yes.
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 Married?
We're getting married here. And I know it seems formal and strange, but we've done this in the past with some others, and it's just something we're supposed to do with the quasi judicial if there could be unique circumstances, and it's best just to do that housekeeping early. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to go through this presentation for council. It basically outlines the staff report that's in your guys' packets, but just for presentation purposes. So the location is 9683 Saddle Avenue. The property is owned by Mrs. Jennifer Castellucci and Ronald Raines, her husband. That's your dad. Sorry, yes. Her father is Mr. Ronald Raines, which is also a co-applicant on this application. The request is for a special use permit to allow an accessory dwelling to be constructed on the subject property. The subject property is 3.319 acres and it's located there at the end of Saddle Avenue. Just went over that. So kind of getting into the request and the existing conditions of the property. Once again, the request here is for a construction of an accessory dwelling unit there at the rear of the property. You guys can see the proposed site plan and the location of where it's at. These existing conditions, the top left picture is from the subject property's driveway looking north towards 96 Saddle Avenue. The top right is the subject property driveway looking east. That's the dead end of Saddle that runs into the Painted Turtle Trail there in Marvin Creek. The bottom left picture is the subject property's driveway kind of looking to the west up towards Saddle, towards Marvin Road. And then the bottom right is the subject property or from Saddle Avenue looking up the driveway of the subject property. Furthermore, the top left is the existing home on the property. The bottom picture is the detached garage that's already located on the property, and kind of outlining where the proposed driveway to access the ADU coming off the existing driveway. And then the top right just kind of shows that path that the proposed driveway would go down. Furthermore, these three pictures, the top left is from the sewer easement at the very rear of the property, looking towards the existing dwelling, the home, as well as you can faintly see that fence there, but that would be the location of the accessory dwelling. The top right is basically at the back of the existing home. The fence line, it would be basically the front of the accessory dwelling, and then the bottom picture would be the proposed accessory dwelling location looking towards the back of the home. Surrounding land use and zoning. The subject property is zoned R Marvin Residential. The purpose of the R Marvin Residential District is established to provide for residential development at low densities consistent with rural character of the village. And as already mentioned, the property is located there at the end of Saddle. The surrounding zoning, all the properties surrounding the subject property are zoned R Marvin Residential. All the surrounding land uses include either residential use, or to the south and east is there's a common open space buffer per se, from the south of being the preserve and the east being the Marvin Creek common open space. Just the general R Marvin lot characteristics, like the minimum lot regulations per our zoning ordinance is a 50-foot front setback, 20-foot side setback. It's 25 if it's a corner lot. 40 on the rear. The minimum lot width at the building front is 130 feet, and the minimum road frontage is 50 feet. So getting into the review and discussion of the application, so the special use permit is a process which allows the village council to review and approve specific uses that are in keeping with the intent and the purpose of the zoning district, but may have substantial impacts on the surrounding area. This process allows conditions or restrictions to be placed on the approval that would minimize impacts to the surrounding area. So per 151.054G, there's accessory dwellings are subject to the issuance of a special use permit by the village council. That's what this public hearing is for, and shall be in accordance to the following criteria. There's 10 criteria. The first one being the accessory dwelling may be attached within separate from the principal dwelling. This one would be detached, kind of sketched out right there on the aerial where it would be located. Number two, the principal use of the lot shall be be a detached or attached single-family home built to North Carolina Housing Code standards. The principal use of this lot is single-family residential with an existing single-family dwelling as the principal building. Number three, no more than one accessory dwelling shall be permitted on a single deeded lot in conjunction with the principal dwelling unit. This property does not have any other accessory dwellings on the property. Number four, the accessory dwelling shall be owned by the same person as the principal dwelling. This would follow suit with this. Number five, and just to also mention, this proposal it's basically a mother-in-law suite for the applicant's parents. And I'll kind of get in that to the end of this review. Number five, the exterior appearance of the accessory dwelling unit shall be similar to the principal residence. That does meet this application does meet that. I will show proposed elevations in the next slide or so. And number six, the detached accessory dwelling shall be housed in a building not to exceed 650 square feet of first floor area maximum footprint, or 50% of the first floor area of the principal dwelling, whichever is greater. The structure may be a dwelling only, or may be combined with garage, workshop, studio, or similar use. Staff will get into these here in a sec. Number seven, a detached accessory dwelling shall be located and established in the rear yard and meet the setbacks for the principal structure. Number eight, the accessory dwelling shall not be served by a separate driveway unless the council grants that as part of the special use permit. And 9 and 10 is basically, if approved, the permit will stay valid with the village, and it will also be recorded with the register of deeds. So the proposed accessory dwelling, these are the proposed elevations. They are by staff's findings, the same look, characteristic, and design of the principal dwelling of the existing home on the site. So now getting into those, the proposed dwelling would be a standalone structure. The principal dwelling consists of roughly 7,500 square feet, which 5,000 of that, roughly 5,000 square feet of that is the first floor footprint area. So that would be permitted per the ordinance up to 50% of that. The proposed accessory dwelling is totaling 2,800 or 2,089 square feet of actual living space. This is below that 50% allowance per 151.054 G6. The accessory dwelling will also match the exterior principal dwelling. The proposed location is behind the principal, so it meets the setbacks of the principal. So it's a minimum of 40 feet off the rear, 20 off the side, and 50 off the front. See, the proposed accessory dwelling will be accessed from the existing driveway, so it does comply with that. And furthermore, they do not have any other accessory dwellings on the site. The applicant will also be preserving as many trees and only removing the trees located in the location of the ADU, as well as for the construction of the driveway. I think it's like a few underbrush and like 2 trees, but they have agreed to mitigate and plant evergreen screening along the side property line for mitigation. And then finally, all adjoining property owners were notified by mail. The public notice was published in the newspaper, and the sign was posted at the side of the property for this public hearing. Now, finally, when you guys are reviewing the special use permit, you guys will conclude findings of fact per the hearing. Those 5 are: 1, that the use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to plan. The staff findings are in bold, and staff finds that the applicant complies with this. 2, the use meets all required conditions and specifications. Applicant complies. 3, the use will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, or the use is a public necessity. Applicant complies. And then 4, the location and character of the use is, if developed according to plan as submitted and approved, will be in harmony with the land, with the area in which it is located, and will be in general conformity with this chapter and the village land use plan. Applicant complies. And then number 5, basically the additional review criteria, which those are the ones that I've already outlined in 151.054. So finally, staff does recommend approval of this. The applicant will provide the additional screening. Has already agreed to apply the additional screening. Staff does find that the applicant fully complies with all the requirements in 151.054G. And then the final requirement that if the council votes to approve this, that the accessory dwelling heated living space shall not exceed that number of 2,089 square feet. Any questions from council?
Septic and well.
Your property's on the sewer. And I'll,
So, the last 3 homes, including mine, are on the sewer that serves Innisbrook and North Creek. So the sewer easement is actually on my property, and you're tied into that.
And that's obviously,
And we're just gonna tie into the existing clean out, we don't even have to get a new tap.
There's no HOA in Marvin Estates there. Are there any deed restrictions or anything?
not to my knowledge.
and have we heard from any of the neighbors?
I have not. I don't know if anybody has signed up for this.
No one has signed up to speak.
We can open it up, and then,
You asked.
and I'll also open it up if there's anything else you want to say, or your father.
Yeah, I mean.
if-
Wait,
You
let's
gotta
get-
sworn in, yeah, you gotta be
Yeah,
sworn in.
you need to be sworn in if you're gonna
first,
say anything else.
I'm sorry.
so You gotta be sworn in.
We gotta swear you in.
So if you don't want to say anything, you don't have
I'm
to.
going to swear again.
Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony that you are about to give during this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
All right, so, I mean, Hunter already went over all of the factual stuff, but to the extent that it makes a difference in your consideration, the purpose for this is that my parents would are interested, they live in a very large house currently and would like to downsize. So of course, we looked around for smaller houses, but when you get smaller houses, you get smaller density and because those make great investment properties, you typically get a lot of renters, not quite the quality of area they want to, move to. And so it seemed like an excellent situation, whereas my property is located in exactly the kind of environment they would like to be in, to take advantage of the large property and allow them to downsize and age in place where I am an only child and can very easily help them as they get older. The design of the house and the size of it has been very carefully considered between a balance between them not feeling like they're being moved into, a dorm room, and still feeling like it has a home, without going over the restrictions that are required by the ordinance. So we've tried to strike a very careful balance there. And then, of course, obviously, the concern that everybody has, especially pertaining to the discussion earlier regarding, rentals and stuff like that, is when you build a dwelling unit, obviously, everybody's concern is, will somebody use it to rent out to someone else? I can speak to our intention. I built my dream house. My intention is to live in that thing forever. Sometime decades down the road, if my kids have a family, it is quite part of our intention that I would then move into the little house, and my kid's family could have the big house. So that is our intention. Obviously, intentions don't mean very much if things outside of our control change. The only thing I can say to that is that the size of my property and the fact that there are these two buildings there would still be within the density targets of the zoning area, even if it were treated as a separate house. And I also would, the way we have oriented on the lot with the back of the dwelling unit, proposed dwelling unit facing the back of my house, it's very unlikely that if we were to sell it, somebody else would be willing to rent to a stranger, for example, that would interface that directly with the two houses. So is it possible that somebody could do that in the future? I suppose, but it's not our intention, and we've done everything that we can to make that as unlikely as possible. Finally, the last benefit is that we only share one property line with any other homeowner, and we can do quite a bit to mitigate that screening. The other sides of our property all face open space. So we feel that the impact of this on the surrounding community would be very limited. So if anybody has any questions about it, I'd be happy to answer.
So because it is a separate home, does it have a separate deed to it, or because it's on the same property, it's all under the same deed?
It is all under the same deed. My understanding is that if I wanted to, say, subdivide this in my neighborhood and build a completely separate home on it, I don't know of any restrictions that would prevent me from doing that and building.
One would be a septic, I think, if that was an
Well,
issue.
so we would have to get the
instead of other, but
sewer.
You don't have that issue.
Exactly. So I think the only restriction there would, I think by right, probably, and I'm just guessing, that if we were to subdivide, we would be able to build whatever house we wanted back there, within setbacks and of course. But in this current interest rate environment, I wouldn't want to have to like refinance the main property. And so this is the best compromise solution for everybody involved, so that it stays one parcel. And in that way kind of mitigates the increased density.
Yeah, and it looks like you have a nice lake there in some of the pictures, which it's not, but it can be. How close is that is that any closer?
It's not, that is actually the flood zone that is in contention with the Marvin Creek Trail. We are staying well outside of it. We are cheating this to the far side of the property that's away from that flood zone.
Very good.
Because obviously we don't want to deal with that.
If you build on stilts.
Yeah, right.
And I would just like to mention that per the special use permit, those requirements, all those get recorded with the special use permit approval. One of those is that the accessory dwelling is always supposed to remain under the same, basically under the same deed as the property. The second thing is based off of with the ordinance requirements and having it required to meet the existing setbacks of the primary, as well as being located behind the existing. This kind of rules out any subdividing because you can't subdivide, you can't have a landlocked lot. And so you can't have a flag lot. So you would be really carving it up. So it makes it hard in this situation or any situation with accessory dwellings to really subdivide the accessory dwelling to be a different unit, correct?
So with an accessory dwelling, is there a minimum acreage? I think she mentioned 3 point something that she has, but just for my knowledge, for an accessory dwelling, is there a minimum amount of acreage that you need to have? Or as long as it fits the setback requirements and all those other things, that it's kind of a...
Yeah, as long as it fits the setback. And we did this ordinance intentionally that reason, because if you really think about properties in Marvin, if you have a smaller lot, like if you live in the preserve or something, you're not going to be able to build a massive accessory dwelling because you've got to comply with the rear setback of the primary and stuff. It's not like an accessory structure. That's not a dwelling that can be 10 feet off the rear and side. This has to be a minimum of whatever the platted setbacks, which is 40 on the rear on this one and then 20 on the side. So that's where it really prohibits any of that from happening, as well as the size requirements that we have in the ordinance.
Is there anyone in the audience that has any question, comments during the public hearing? Hearing none. And no one signed up, I assume.
You agree to close the public hearing?
This discussion. All right. Make a motion to close the public hearing. Keep forgetting this. All right, so we'll close the public. Any other comments from council, questions that you want to discuss? I did have one. Will it have a separate address or will it be all the same address? Same address, okay.
It's essentially just, you know, what when you think of, you know, branded flat, whatever, it's still on property, there's just, it's like a pool house with a.
Yeah. Okay. We're ready to,
Yeah, so in your guys' packets, there should be a prepared motion with the adoption of the finding of facts and then also with the conditions as recommended.
anyone want to take that?
Sure, I'll do it. You all look at me, I know. All right. So I would like to make a motion to approve the request for special use permit application number 2024-1 with the consented conditions to allow for an accessory dwelling unit per statute 151.054G located at 9683 Saddle Avenue per statute 151.054C and determine the following finding of fact. 1, the proposed special use permit will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to plan. 2, the proposed special use meets all required conditions and specifications. 3, the proposed special use will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, or the use is a public necessity. 4, the location and character of the proposed special use, if developed according to the plan as submitted and approved, will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located and will be in general conformity with the Village of Marvin Code of Ordinances and the Village Land Use Plan. 5, the proposed special use complies with the additional requirements as outlined in statute 151.054C. 6, the special use permit must comply with the following conditions. The accessory dwelling heated living space shall not exceed 2,089 square feet. The applicant will provide additional screening if needed along the rear and side property line. The applicant to fully comply with statute 151.054G. The proposed structure cannot be used as a customary home occupation office per statute 151.045.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Congratulations. It's nice to be able to do that and have family that close, and that's awesome. Good for you. Congrats on that. Next up, we have unfinished business. We're going to discuss and consider the return of the Marvin Creek Connector Trail easement.
So I received an email from Milan, he's the HOA president for Marvin Creek, on Sunday, March 24th, provided the email into your agenda packet, but basically in short, it says, when Marvin Creek entered into the agreement with the village on the easement, the assumption was the trail would be built in the calendar year of 2024. At the completion of various studies and delay of the build of the path would beyond the end of the calendar year, the board would need to have the easement provided back. So that memo is in your agenda packet. Wanted to bring it to you all for your attention and action at this point.
What was the, was there a reason given on the time frame? And was there a significant reason or any reason given as to why they said if it wasn't done before this specified time?
The only thing I can tell you is what's listed in many conversations have occurred, not only on design, which we're very appreciative of, but now there's the need for additional studies. While the village may want to rethink the terms of timing, if the completion of various studies would delay into the next calendar year, we would need to have the easement provided back. It is not to say that we are not supportive of the trail, but we need to reconsider if the project moves into 2025 or beyond. He didn't give me a reason other than what's in that memo or email, I'm sorry.
So with respect to John's comments, with respect to everyone, respect to Milan, the HOA, the residents, for following the process and providing this, and out of the respect for PR&G coming to having their meeting around this, I don't know, I'm just being honest, that I'm prepared to make a decision, because if I'd make a decision one way, I'm going against PR&G, and you said that they, with the exception of one person, were unanimous on that. And I need to find out why they, at one point in time, they were all for, and now they're all against. And if I vote the other way, I want to know the answers. I want to know the answers to all my questions. And I want to gather all the information before I can make an informed decision. If y'all want to make a decision tonight, that's fine. I guess my part would be no vote or whatever, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, just to clarify, you mentioned all for and then all against, and I'm not sure, because I don't know that PRG is voted on this or made a recommendation.
I thought you said that they did make a recommendation.
Well, I'm saying previously, because I think you said they were all for previously. And are you referencing to 6 months ago or 8 months ago when it came before the board, or?
Well, when we had the discussion before we had the joint PR&G meeting.
Okay, with the joint
There
PRG.
was concerns of why we would not. Now there's concerns that why are we? And I need to know, and again, feel free, everyone else feel free to do it, but I would like to know, out of respect for the PR&G board, I don't want to go against their recommendation. If they tell us that their recommendation is that they recommend that we not take it back, I need to know why.
Yeah, I think that they were just trying to consider as more information has come out regarding the situation. I think initially they were kind of taken aback by some of the concerns that were expressed and, the process as it was being portrayed as how it was followed. I think today, when they had a better understanding after Jen's discussion around, what's really, a floodway versus a floodplain and some of the more nuanced facts around that particular site and so forth, I think they saw a way that if village council were to invest the money for the study, that there seems to be nothing to preclude, the project from continuing forward at that point. And given the fact that the request came about, something being done by the end of 2024, I think they just thought, well, rather than take this, which could be a critical kind of, connection for, a substantial number of people in the community, that since the verbiage mentioned through 2024, well, why do we have to make a decision on this right now? Council is considering their priorities for not just this, but other trails and things like that, and whether or not to invest the $33,000 or so that it would take to, do some of the studies and things like that. So at that point, when they kind of had a straw vote, there were two PRG members that were saying they were leaning towards giving it back, two that were saying, well, we think it's more better to take kind of a wait and see approach and, let council kind of work through their process. And then Jen Barbara actually had left the meeting, and we didn't know what reason. She may have had an emergency, who knows, or an appointment, but she didn't ask to be excused when she left. So when she left, that also means that's an automatic yes vote, and she was one of the no's. So it kind of complicated things, but in the end, they just thought that it was more responsible to let council kind of consider, given that they don't have to make a decision today, because there's really a couple of different decisions that you make. You continue to make the decision that we're going to go forward and invest the money in the studies and things right now and continue to moving down that track. Or you just give the easement back and you don't go down that track. Or you hold on to it and you don't necessarily make those investments yet, but you might 3 or 4 months from now, when you still have time to make a decision before the end of 2024. So.
Well, so I guess the one thing that I want to know is, there's been some discussion about some different options with this, and with the different options, is it needed for the studies, or does that portion conform with our ordinance that's in place?
You mean the portion that's just in the Marvin Creek? I'll have to let Hunter answer that question. Unfortunately, there's not an actual survey of the new proposed easement, so I don't know if he can answer that question fully, but I do know that I think that the majority of it is outside of the floodway, but I'm going to let you answer that.
Yeah, on the handouts that you guys have, once again, this is the approximate location. The lighter blue in the middle is the floodway. Crossing that or any disturbance in that is what requires the engineered certifications for the floodplain development permit. The blue is just the 100-year fringe line. Any development with that, and that would just be, still a floodplain development permit, but is all, permitted per our ordinance. So if we stay out of the floodway, then yes, which outside of that slight corner there, which my recommendation would be to survey the floodway line and then have the proposed route staked to make sure that it's not encroaching in the floodway. And we would want to do that anyway before issuance of the floodplain development permit. The other option to do the trail would be to then slightly basically bring the trail down and get an easement from the preserve in this location and cross down here. Because once it's out of the mapped floodplain, you don't need any engineering certifications for the crossing of the creek. And that has been confirmed with Terry Fox, the North Carolina floodplain administrator for this, for our region.
So that's a better better route, better crossing, better for all things concerned as far as the trail goes, correct?
Yes, I mean, we would still want to, like I said, these first maps, I mean, it's not, you know, we want them to, like I said, be staked to make sure we have enough room. And like I said, then we'd have to go to the preserve HOA and probably request an additional easement, but that would save engineering. The cost of the trail would probably go up a tad just because of the linear footage of the trail construction compared to what was originally quoted. But I can probably say with good confidence that that cost is going to be cheaper than the engineering. But it's still going, we'd have to go through and get another easement, and we'd also be paying for surveying as well for the staking and easement preparation documents, which you guys have actually already approved a quote for that probably about 3 months ago now. So like that scope of work's already technically been approved via contract. It already has funding allocated to it if we want to move forward. We just haven't moved forward with it.
Does that answer any of your questions,
No,
John?
it doesn't. Again, is this something that we have to vote on tonight? Is this, I want to be clear. First off, we're not doing anything in that area. We pulled everything out. We're not touching anything. We're not doing anything. Am I correct in that?
That's correct.
We have no plans on doing anything or sending anyone out there to do anything in the next months.
And unless y'all move forward on the
Well,
next item.
Okay. And so, again, just out of respect to both sides on this, I would like to get a further explanation from PRG. And I would like to ask the question of the HOA as to the stipulation of time. Was there a specific reason on that? I just want to I want to make an informed decision. And right now, I feel with what was just brought up, I'm not making an informed decision. And I have no problem in doing this a month from now or whatever.
I just was curious if any of that information answered any questions that you had. I agree, I understand the questions you just outlined, and I have those same questions, so I agree with you. I was just curious if
Well,
you answered some of the questions that you had there.
There have, but I've also uncovered a lot of other information as well but I think I'm hopeful that everyone respects that we're trying to make an informed decision, and we will share all information together, and then a decision's made. Not a knee jerk and not a just off the cuff type of answer. And my request is only to say, that we have completely pulled everything out of there, and now let's assess everything and get all the information, and we make an informed decision on whether to give it. Because you got to remember too, this is the ripple effect. If we give the easement back, we are setting precedent. And what we do today will impact another council 1, 2, 5, 10 years from now. And they'll go, oh, you remember what you did with this one? Oh, okay. Well, then we're stuck. So out of respect for future councils, there are future councils that are out there, I think we just make an informed decision and put the facts around it.
Yeah, I don't think anything you're saying is contrary to what the PRG kind of pushed forward today. I think they thought, if we don't make a decision today, we allow council to kind of further investigate the expense part of it, because that's important too, because, with what limited funds we have, even PRG, is wanting to be responsible with, what funds. So I think that's really kind of why they made the recommendation that they did, to allow staff, council to kind of better understand the situation, maybe this new route that Hunter's talking about. And, quite frankly, we have time. We're not investing any more funds in there at this point, and we can make a better informed decision.
So with that being said, Hunter, can you check with the trail builder about the new proposed route that you just mentioned? And then also talk to the preserve HOA about getting an additional easement so that we can stay out of the floodplain area that's mapped?
Yeah, I can, that's what I was already jotting down my own direction. So, yeah, I can, discuss with Blue Ridge Trail Works to get a quote off a new route, have him flag it. And then I will also go and, initiate a conversation with the Reserve HOA, in requesting an additional easement to connect. And then if the council decides to move forward based off the information from those two, then we can move forward with that, having it staked and all that stuff to ensure, the location's, adequate.
So that's one piece of it.
Just
I got-
one other thing, just Jen, we happen to have Jen here, who's the PRG
Right.
chair, but did I mischaracterize anything, or is there anything you want to add to that? Okay.
No, that's fine. I don't know if I'm really supposed to speak in that capacity here. I mean, I just want to invite me to. But no, I don't think you misrepresented anything at all. I think, that the concern with though there.
Jen, can you come up to the microphone so people, as it's being recorded, can hear you?
You guys
I'm
are all right
sorry.
with that?
Yeah, that's fine. No, that's legitimate. So I think John characterized it very accurately, is that when we first initially started discussing it, and I was taking the pulse of the various board members, I asked each in turn, are you in favor of returning the easement or are you not? And the initial response was from Jennifer Barber that she was in favor of returning the easement, and from Bob Nunnenkamp initially was in favor of returning the easement. However, I sort of stayed out of it. I didn't really want to direct any of the discussion because, as you guys have seen, my property borders it. And so I felt that, my position should sort of just sort of be to facilitate the discussion and not direct it. So I kind of stayed out of it a little bit, and Christina Culp was in favor of maintaining or keeping the easement indefinitely, I think, because for those who are in favor of keeping the easement, I think the concern is that even if we do nothing with it right now at all, if we keep it sort of in perpetuity, it leaves our options open. And the reason that we would want to do that is that looking at that map, and our new board member, Christina Traub, was in favor of keeping the easement in-house. Because, for example, she lives in Canterfield Creek and there are no trails in her community at all. And for them to access the trail system that we are trying to provide, this connector would suddenly link her community with Village Hall. I mean, if we complete this little tiny, this what was 800 linear feet of trail, we have actually connected to big sections of our system. And I haven't really examined the map in all that kind of detail, haven't gone down rabbit holes with agency approvals and everything. But I'm not aware of any other trail provision that really provides the same kind of connection. You'd either have to go out onto Marvin Road or you'd have to go on Marvin School Road. This is an internal connector that would connect north and south down to Village Hall. So, I can't say that the board, because there was some wavering, after further discussion about the fact that we might be able to complete the Marvin Creek HOA own or easement portion without incurring the engineering costs and so on and so forth. I think that started to sway the thinking that maybe, if we could at least complete that portion and then figure out how to complete the preserve part just to get over the creek bed, that, if a solution could be found, we wanted to leave that option open. And so, the other thing, let me just add, is that in our recommendation, we talked about the concerns were the cost of it. Could this money be better spent elsewhere? Or is this a connector that is so critical that it's worth the expense? And I think kind of like you, nobody was really ready today to commit to that, which is why the recommendation was a little wishy-washy. The other concern in particular was how many people are actually using it, such that this informs how critical of a connector it is. We can look at a map and say, this is key, but who's going to use it? And to that end, I noted that because I live right there, the end of Saddle Avenue is extremely well-traveled by people. Many of the trails in this community probably don't get a lot of use. But when I got home this afternoon, I asked my husband, because he's the one who primarily walks the dogs, and between the two of us, we came up with a mental tally. We don't know the names of these people, but we came up with a mental tally of at least 20 people we see on a daily basis. Right now, going from Saddle into the Marvin Creek development, a lot of them walk their kids to school there. A lot of runners from Firethorn come and use that trail. So of our trails in the area, it would seem to be one that is actually getting some use. That's anecdotal information. You can do with it what you will. But that was some of our concern today was the cost, and did this merit it? Did the trail usage merit this? And did its position in our trail system warrant the extra money to pursue the appropriate agency compliance issues and so on and so forth? So if were not presented with the workaround that I think you guys just looked at, which is making sure that it gets rerouted outside of the floodway and then further around to skirt the floodway on the preserve property. And I think if they were presented with that information, on balance, that might shift things, because then we're not looking at the engineering problems for FEMA at least. And then it would just depend on the other environmental issues. So.
If anybody contacted these people that the trail is going behind, because that's one of the things people come up with. And I really don't want the trail behind me, I don't want it beside of me, whatever. Have we approached it, or do we need to approach it?
I do not have any information on who here may have approached anyone there. I do know that some of the affected homeowners have come and spoken in public comment. They are part of the, they're expressing their concern that we're following the appropriate agency and environmental concerns. So, is that ultimately their concern, or are they really just concerned that there's a trail behind their house? And that's legitimate. I mean, as an impacted homeowner, taking off the PRNG hat for a moment, I can tell you, I'm not in favor of having a whole bunch of other people walking around behind my property. And nobody in my neighborhood is excited about my dog's reaction to that. On the other hand, I think to paraphrase Spock, I guess, the needs of the many outweigh the inconvenience of the few. And for me, it's not that big of an issue. I would rather see the community benefit from the trail than worry about, a few extra people walking past my property. So, but that's a personal perspective. Not everybody, who's impacted is going to feel the same way, but that is something that informs at least my decision-making on it.
Christine, I talked about that we need my subdivision, a lot of subdivision, if you want to have a building or you're going to put a patio or a porch on the back of your house, you need to ask your neighbors, and they need to say out. And I've talked to her about if we could do something like that, and not just ask them, but say, you need to put your name on this, that you don't have a problem with this at this time. To understand where we stand with, because they come back 6 months later, well, I didn't think that this would be this busy. I didn't think that, I've had this many people wandering around here.
I think the only complication with that is that it sort of undermines the authority of the HOA. If they're part of an HOA and the HOA presumably follow, and that has been an issue of some concern. But if the HOA, we can only presume that they have followed their appropriate procedures. If they haven't, then that is an issue for the homeowners in that development.
I would like the HOA to say yes also, but I would like the individual homeowners. I walk in 3 different neighborhoods. And Christine was with me one time, and Hunter, when we was walking, people spoke to me and stuff. And then later on, they come back, well, what was that about? You know, what was you doing? These people here looking around.
Mhm.
So.
And so presume, I mean, just devil's advocate, if though, whenever you put a trail in, right, there's always impacted people and a lot of them are not necessarily happy about it. In my case, I'm willing to get over it, but, assuming for the sake of argument that you get objections from the homeowners, as I suspect you will get from somebody along that path, does it need to be unanimous?
I don't think so. I mean, we just need to know the general feeling. I
Okay.
mean, if you got 10 people there and 9 of them don't like it, I think we have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to propose something to Jamie. So you have some questions to get clarification, which I'm all for getting more information. And government works slow and we work by committee. So instead of you just getting it, is there a proposal you want to make as far as a separate meeting with? I just want to know how we're going to get to where you're going to get comfortable and possibly, and I haven't heard from everyone else, how everyone else is going to get comfortable with this decision, whatever decision it is we make. I mean, because you can say, yeah, I want to learn more, but what is that process? I'm just curious.
Well, I think we meet with Jen's,
Okay.
we meet with Jen's group. We get those concerns from them. We've gotten our feedback from the HOA. It's a simple conversation with the HOA.
Okay.
And I'm appreciative of one thing that I was fighting for from the very beginning of this is there's a process. And the process is now being followed. The HOA is now, it's not an individual, it's the HOA. And the HOA, they've done their part and I appreciate it. I have one question for them. It's on time. And the other question is with you, and then we can make an informed decision. I think that can be done within next time we get together.
Yeah. I personally, I'm not sure why they would put a time frame on it.
That, I'm not sure what
I
that,
don't understand because it's like 2 years down the road, we could have a grant that allows us to explore all the options and what's the best option. So to just give it, so that's where I'm a little concerned.
I'm a
about.
little confused by that requirement as well. I mean, we just knew that was sort of their stipulation, and so we didn't really dive into that at all. I mean, it seems to me that even if we don't give it back and we do nothing, it's still open space, so who cares? I mean, it doesn't change it doesn't change the quality of what's out there,
Well, again,
depending on who is controlling it.
yeah, it just seems odd that you put a timeframe on an easement.
I agree.
And something be done to it. So I'd like to ask the question and I'd like to share the information with everyone, council, with you, with the HOA, with the residents, and show the information that we do have and see if we can come up where it works for the benefit of everyone. And
Yeah.
and again, we go back to being careful of setting a precedent.
No, I agree. And I would encourage you to, anybody who wants to dive deeper into this, to talk to PRNG directly and hear. It's one thing, I mean, obviously we had we had ambiguous feelings today. It's
And that's
hard
what
to
I
come
wanna
to
avoid,
consensus.
individual conversations. Whereas if you can get your group and pick a couple dates out that we could have another
Mhm.
joint meeting, council agrees to it. And so we're all hearing the same thing, because the last thing I want is.
Well,
you
again,
hearing
if I say, again, I'm damned if I do and damned if I don't, at this point. If I voted tonight and I said, nope, we're giving the easement back, I'm going against her board, and her board has a say.
And I would not want to stand here. I mean, like I said, I took my PRNG hat off to give you my personal view as an impacted homeowner.
Right.
But wearing my board hat, I'm not in the heads of the individuals on my board and would not want to represent for them outside of an official motion or anything, their feelings on it. Now, I do predict that those thoughts may shift once presented with the alternate route, if that seems feasible. So I would put off any kind of meeting until after we have that additional information, so that they have that information as well in case that impacts their thinking, because it might. But I can't get in their heads and represent their opinions here. There are some who will
And I
be.
don't,
favor of giving it back and some not, and you should know why from them.
And I should know why from them, and I think
So-
we should all know why.
So their next meeting is on May 7th. Y'all's next meeting is on May 14th. So if you want to give staff time between now and May 7th to get that information, you can present that
I can
at
present
the
that
next
at
meeting,
7.
and then we can find something, a special meeting. I
And-
did, would
If
that
we can
work?
have that information by then.
I did want to come back to Councilman Deffler, your comments, your questions about notification. I can't speak for who all was individually notified at the time of the initial discussions. I will say that when residents came out and started requesting certain things for health and safety issues and just being opposed to it, I did reach out to our former employee Derek and asked him if he did speak with all residents that were there. He did give me one exception, that he did not speak with one resident that abutted that property. But in terms of other property owners, I can't speak for who he did or did not. If that's something that council wants us to do in the future, y'all would really kind of need to dictate that procedure, because we really rely on the HOA to do that process for us.
It has not worked well this time.
I just wanted to make that distinction, because that's not what we've done in the past. So
Just future discussions.
so we can get the information to you before your May 7th.
Time before the agenda gets set for the 7th, then that's great. If not, we can push it. I mean.
Does that work for everyone?
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm good with it.
All right. All right, thanks, Jim. But before we move on, I did want to bring up, we've got, with this easement, there are residents that think that we have violated floodplain development, things with FEMA. And so I just wanted to follow up about that, because we did talk with Terry Fox, the NFIP planner for the Western Branch of North Carolina. And Christina sent we've had, a resident send an email to him, and Christina wanted to get some clarification on his response. So Christina has asked, has the Village of Marvin currently been cited or are under review for floodplain development violations? And he said, no, ma'am. No violations have been noted, as no audit has been done on the community since it began participation in the National Flood Insurance Program in 1998. The second question was, what is the process for identifying and providing corrective action for a municipality that has a floodplain development violation? And the reason that I'm going over this is because the resident said that they won't be able to get flood insurance. It will be very expensive if we're not compliant. And there could be suspensions of the availability of flood insurance to homeowners. So I think this is very important that people hear this. This is coming straight from the NIFP planner for the Western Branch in North Carolina. So let me go back to the second question. What is the process for identifying and providing corrective action for a municipality that has a floodplain development violation? Which the first question says we do not have any. But if we had some, first, a community assistance visit, an audit, which is a normal process by which North Carolina floodplain mapping or FEMA would note and find any potential violations, would need to occur first. Two, during that audit process, any potential violations would be confirmed. And once confirmed, there would be an agreed upon timeline between the community and the state or FEMA, whoever did the audit, in which those violations would or should be corrected. During the audit, if any permits, elevation certificates, no-rise certificates, any applied for, approved, or denied variances, site plans, or other floodplain records would then be reviewed. A violation is defined as the failure of a structure or other development to be fully compliant with the community's floodplain management regulations. A structure or other development without the elevation certificate, other certifications, or other evidence of compliance required in Article 4 and 5 is presumed to be in violation until such time as that documentation is provided. Okay, the third question that Christina asked.
Actually, sorry, clarification. He That's not the third question. That goes on to his answer with number 2.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So should the community fail to comply to rectify those violations, FEMA then would be contacted. So then if the community failed to correct the violations after multiple attempts by the state or FEMA could potentially, and this is could is in all caps, potentially, and then in parentheses, he says, I have been here a long time and have never seen this happen. Put the community on probation. That would mean if, in all caps, FEMA put the community on probation, which may usually last about 6 months to allow time to rectify the violations, the following would happen. A $50 surcharge per policy, no new NFIP flood insurance policies or renewals, no federal grants or loans for development in SFHAs under federal programs, no state or federal disaster assistance to communities, or to repair insurable buildings located in SFHAs, no federal mortgage insurance or loan guarantees in SFHAs. Federally insured or regulated lenders must notify applicants seeking loans that there is a flood hazard. The property is not eligible for federal disaster relief. Liability of flood losses within the FEMA published SFHAs falls to that respective community. So the third question was,
I'm sorry, can I clarify one
you
thing?
want to do this or you want me to do this?
I just wanted to say that the parenthetical that she read, I've been here a long time and never seen this happen. I can personally vouch that Terry has been there at least 20 years. So within 20 years, the claim that FEMA could potentially put a community on probation, he has never seen that happen in his tenure. I just want to make that distinction, sorry.
Thank you. No, thank you. The third question that Christina asked was, can you build in a floodplain if you have a permit from the local jurisdiction who manages the floodplain? Absolutely, yes. Development can occur in the special flood hazard area floodplain if the community's floodplain development ordinance is followed. And we know that we made a mistake and we didn't have a permit for that. So if we move forward, that will be rectified. The fourth question was, are there necessary FEMA permits to build in a floodplain, or is it just permitting from the local jurisdiction who manages the floodplain? His answer is the local community is the permitting authority for floodplain development, as was agreed upon when the community joined the National Flood Insurance Program. Each community's floodplain development ordinance has specific requirements that must be met, and those may usually include all applicable local, state, or federal permits. So there is no FEMA permitting required. Those are my words, not his. The fifth question was, and last, how would a local jurisdiction lose their participation in NFIP? And the answer was, by failure to comply with violations of their floodplain development ordinance after multiple attempts to get these violations corrected. Christina then ask a follow-up, would there be notice and time to correct issues, or do they just lose participation instantly if a violation is discovered? The response was, it would only be after multiple failed attempts to get the violations corrected. Nothing would be instant, except for a failure to adopt new maps by the required time of adoption. Even that has at least a year of pre-adoption stuff. Further losing participation would only come after probation and then suspension, a long documented process. So I hope this helps understand that we are not in violation, that we're not on the brink of losing the flood insurance program here in the village of Marvin. But I'm sure that, if you guys have more questions, please, Christina can reach out to Christina, and we can get those answers for you.
There's also one ending sentence that Terry Fox, who I will just remind folks that he is with the North Carolina Department of Public Safety Division of Emergency Management Hazard Mitigation Section. He is our Western Branch Community Development Planner for the National Floodplain Insurance Program. So he is our liaison to that plan. He's the one that we would call to help do any type of audits or anything like that. Or if there were a violation, he's the one that we would call. He's our representative. In this email, he also stated, I can assure you that the Village of Marvin is currently in good standing with NFIP, and we will work together to ensure you remain that way and to protect your citizens. He has also invited, he has encouraged, if you guys want him to come to one of the meetings to speak, he is more than welcome to do so as well.
We might have him do that. Thank you.
Okay.
I think everybody has their marching orders.
Any other questions? Comments?
You good? Good? Okay.
All right. So. Sorry, lost my
Number
place.
two.
Yes, but I am gonna suspend the rules and just out of the respect for, I have kids too, and I want to respect the fact that you're assuming your son.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you guys have, are right with it, I'd like to go right to his.
You can do that. You don't have to
Okay.
do any motions or anything.
And I apologize, but we had to get through some of that. So the next up is going to call new businesses, consider approval of the potential Eagle Scout project. I should have passed you a note that said, get ready, you're coming up next. So.
Are you pulling up right now?
I will. Give me 1
Thank you.
second to connect here. There it goes. Forward. There it is.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Frank Brockman. I'm 16 years old. I'm a junior at Marvin Ridge High School. And today I'm working on getting approval for an Eagle Scout project with the Marvin Efron Park. If you could flip to the next slide, please. This is my agenda, the proposal I'll be showing you, like what an Eagle Scout project is, the project proposal, materials, the troop assistance, the beneficiary, and then everything else. You can flip, please. My proposal today is to gain approval for the project from the council here. And the project is trailhead markers at Marvin Efron Park. An Eagle Scout project just gives the scout opportunity to develop a plan and show leadership by putting that plan into motion and following through with it. And there's BSA rules that the project must be benefiting an organization that is not the Boy Scouts of America, which it would not be because this is the council and the Marvin Park. The first thing in getting approval is a Scoutmaster, which is the leader of a scout troop. And then the second thing, which would be the organization, which would be you guys here today. Hopefully I will get the approval for that. And then the third thing, I have to go to the Boy Scouts District Council and speak in front of them after this and get their approval. This is right here, you can see location of where the markers will be. It's pretty self-explanatory. There'll be one at the beginning and then every like quarter mile and then one at the end of the trail. This is what the signs will look like. They will be made out of aluminum sheets, no thicker than 1.2 millimeters, and they will be UV, so they will not fade and they'll look very good. They have the Marvin seal on them and it tells you exactly where you are on the trail in case of emergency. There's going to be about 6 signs or maybe more. We will measure it out to see the distance in case we need to add any more. And basically, that's what the signs will look like. It'll be like 1/4 of a mile, half a mile, 3/4 of a mile. This is the materials that will be used. We'll use a 4x4 cedar post, just like the ones to put in the sign in the front, and we will match the colors too. So everything will look the same. It'll go about 18 inches into the ground and stick 5 feet out so you can see it pretty well. And then the troop assistants, all the work will be done by Troop 120 and scouts in there, supervised by adults. On the project, scouts can't use power tools, so we'll make sure that we'll follow all the rules that we have to, and adults will do that. And I'm planning with the leaders, so everything is fully funded also for this project. The Village of Marvin does not have to pay anything.
You like that?
Yes, sir. The beneficiary, all work before it is done or before anything is set in motion, the beneficiary, Mr. Broom, will know and will be contacted. And once work begins, it'll be supervised. All scouts or helpers will sign the Marvin Efron Park volunteer waiver in case anything happens. And we also are under insurance by the BSA, so that is all covered. And the project, again, is fully funded, so will not cost Marvin anything. The timeline, once I get the approval here tonight, I will be going to the district. So sometime April, I will get the approval for that, and then it should take no more than 2 to 3 weekends. And it'll be on Saturdays and Sundays, and Mr. Broom will know when we're at the park actually working. We hope to start making the signs around the 27th of April. And that won't be held at the park. That'll be held at my house, and we'll just be painting them. And then the project should be complete by the end of May, and if no longer, then early June. Thank you guys for having me here today and hearing me out on this. And I thank you, sir. Thank you all, everyone here.
What question for you?
Yes, sir.
When you just mentioned painting, you guys are painting, what are you painting?
We're painting the posts,
Posts,
the
okay.
cedar posts to
So they're
match.
Treated,
Yes.
cedar's treated, so they'll
Yes, sir.
stand, you probably know that more than
Mhm.
anyone. Okay, so.
It'll be the
That's what
same
you're
type of
painting.
posts that we used on the front.
And the
sign.
signs are actually done by a company?
Yes,
It looks
yes,
like-
sir.
Okay. Good. And I'll open it up to other council members, but.
Well, I remember when the park first opened and we developed the trails, and I think it was council that saved a bunch of cat food and tuna cans that they painted to put on trees as trail markers, but they didn't last very long. So
sir.
I think this is a worthy project, and
Mhm.
I like the extent to which, it looks like a real solid foundation with the concrete and everything. And yeah, look forward to you guys being able to do that.
Thank you.
Scouts have done a number of
Mhm.
projects at the park and have really enhanced it over the years. I've been there when they've done some of the projects, and it's a great program,
Mhm.
and I'm all for it myself. So
Who's going to be overseeing as far as the work and stuff? Is it our person or is it the scout?
So it's gonna be led by the scouts, but we will have the beneficiary there, Mr. Broom, and he will let you guys know on everything that is happening, because he will be informed.
Okay. And I hear your dad's company's doing, what's the total budget?
Yes, so each sign is it's no more than $36.
We gotta
Um,
get that guy for our signs. If we get that.
Yes, sir. And then the posts, we're just gonna get those from Lowe's and all the other materials, and it shouldn't be that expensive, no more than $600.
Your workforce is all your fellow Boy Scouts?
Yes,
members?
fellow Boy Scouts.
Okay.
Son, I want to commend you on giving your presentation.
Hmm?
I want to commend you on giving your
Thank you.
presentation. You were very professional in doing that. And I know a lot of adults that when they're given a PowerPoint presentation, they can't help themselves but to read off of it, and you did none of that. So I commend you. You did a very good job. You're very professional in your approach and what you put together. So thank you. And I look forward to seeing how this turns out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
Well, the only comment I have is, again, thank you for doing this. You said the project would start April 27th, which is Marvin Day. So you may want to start it then the following weekend, because it'll be a madhouse.
Yeah, actually, well, the first things that we have to do is build the posts, so that'll not be held at the park. It'll be held at my house, so.
Oh, okay.
Don't dig the holes yet.
Yeah.
Frank, thank you.
Need to
And
vote on this?
yes. I
All
think
Thank you
you
for your
did.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the Eagle Scout project presented by Frank Brockman for the trailhead markers at Marvin Eford Park.
Further discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Congratulations.
Good
We'll
job.
get that
Thank
done.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
And if you got homework, Frank, you can go back and start on your homework and stuff. I know my kids do, so sorry about the delay, but we had to get through a lot of the stuff. So thanks for coming out and thanks for doing what you do with the Boy Scouts. Appreciate it. Yep. All right, moving back, jumping into discuss and consider entering contract with Dewberry Engineering for survey, wetland delineation report, flood study model report, and various agency coordination site visits for the Marvin Creek Connector Trail in amount not to exceed $33,000.
Yeah, I think we just put this on hold until we
Yeah.
get further
Yeah,
information.
I just wanted to remind you too, that this quote was good for 90 days. I'm sure they will re-up it, but I just wanted to,
We're
Let
not
you
in a
know.
position to make a decision on it, so if we have to get them to redo it,
okay.
that's fine.
And this study is just specific to this one site and
That's
area.
correct.
That's not part of any of the larger
Correct.
studies that we
Yes.
discussed.
Okay. So no action taken there. Next up, we have discussion consideration of stormwater analysis for Marvin Eford Park and the Marvin Loop Trail.
So, I'll kind of take this as he's handling some stuff out there. Two things. You all had made a motion a couple meetings ago to allow us to go ahead with the paving at Marvin Eford Park contingent upon no issues with stormwater. Our engineers did not feel comfortable making that determination until they actually did a study, even on just the two areas that we had mentioned. So we went back to them, said, hey, bring us a study. In the meantime, we had some recurrent issues that we've been seeing at the Marvin Loop with water, just infiltration. I actually sent you an email of another issue that was on the opposite side. I thought it was here by the school, but it's actually on the Joe Carr side. So there's two different areas of that trail that's just kind of holding a lot of water. So we've been in contact with them about doing some studies on the loop as well. So they're looking at the hydro studies on both the Marvin Loop and at the Marvin Eford Park in one kind of analysis. They're looking at a total of around $8,000 to $10,000, contingent upon them being able to provide, get information, LiDAR information from the state in terms of the topos. So the information about the hydro studies and what that would include is in your agenda packets in a quick little email. This was not a formal quote because we have engineering services that we use through AMT. So we're just asking them to do that same study within the scope of their current contract. That would include a hydrological analysis, a hydraulic analysis. They would look at the land use and topography elevations, which also look at the drainage systems, the culverts, the pipes, the channels, and all of that stuff. They would look at erosion control and sediment, a flood risk assessment. They would look at all of those things in this analysis to determine what we should do in the loop and then Marvin Eford Park. So we're asking for you all to consent for us to move forward on that. And we would basically use the funding that you had previously allocated for the paving that was done out of the ARPA funding. We've had this reoccurring issue on the loop for a long time. I don't feel comfortable making a recommendation to you all on the repairs that are needed until we can find a solution to the water issues that we're seeing. We, about a year ago, just so you all are aware, it's probably a year ago, we contacted DOT to re-slope to clean out the ditches, look at the ditch bank along that area. They came out, they did it. It maybe worked slightly, but it didn't seem to solve the issue.
But it's concentrated in that one area, correct?
It is, but we have recently had a complaint on the opposite side on the Joe Carr near Autumn Blossom, which is a complete opposite side of the.
The next wooded portion of that
Okay.
Marvin Loop, basically. So there's two separate areas, but I mean, we really need to do this, because we need to do it at the park for sure, but we also need to figure out, I mean,
I'm tired of talking about the ditches.
this thing is, as Jamie can attest, we were down there pumping water out of it a couple years ago. It's been an issue and it does need to get rectified once and for all. it is doing some damage to the asphalt down there, and that's another one of the reasons for concern, so.
Okay, so we got to do it. So I'll make a motion to authorize the manager to direct AMT to conduct a stormwater study for Marvin Eford Park and along the Marvin Loop at a cost not to exceed $15,000. We have to do it, so. Let me sit here and beat it to death.
Further discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Where are we at? I know.
Number 4.
Discussion of Marvin Loop Trail maintenance.
Well, that kind of coincides with what I just mentioned. I would rather, instead of making a recommendation on the treatment, and just so y'all are aware, there's 3 different options, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on the numbers. There's crack sealing, which is around $6,000 to $10,000. There is spot repair, which is basically just shaving down the little areas that we've identified as potential tripping hazards. It's estimated around $4,000. We have highlighted those areas and put the public on notice so that if they do come, they know that there's tripping hazards there. There's also some exemptions, and you can speak to that in terms of recreational leisure for liability purposes. But the other option is the resurfacing of the entire trail, which is approximately $150,000. Before we spend that kind of money, I would like to have that water issue really looked at before y'all make any type of vote on that.
Can we do like our own little, like critical areas that are tripping hazards? Like
We've done that. We've already done that. We've highlighted those with spray paint, and we've put a notice out along the trail that says,
Done nothing
He's
to
saying, can we fix
To
it?
fix those, temporary fix or whatever while we're waiting.
Why temporary fix it?
Well,
I think you've marked the
it's a tripping
tripping, well,
hazard.
we've marked the tripping hazards. We've put signs up.
and we're actively working on
And
it.
we're actively trying to remedy the situation. I agree, like, we can't go in and try to fix it until we get the water, because the water is probably causing half of the issue. So, I mean, yes, something needs to be done, but let's get the hopefully underlying issue that's causing all this taken care of.
I recall us doing the crack repair at some point a number of years ago. It would be interesting if we can find out kind of how many years that bought us until we're back in a similar situation again. It'll also help us for future planning too, but Andy, if you recall, we went through that whole process of those 3 different types of repairs. I think it was probably even more than 10 years ago.
No,
so-
I feel like I was there when it was like, there was like 3 different options.
Yeah.
It was like right when I started.
6 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'd just be interesting to know how long it's
So
lasting.
can we get the different quotes for like crack seal, fog seal, and just redoing it?
We've got that.
Oh, we
Yeah,
have
that's
that.
what she had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3,000.
In here?
No,
Yeah.
no, it's not.
Oh, I
It's
was
not.
gonna say, I didn't see
It's
it.
3,000 to 4,000 just to fix the areas that we've identified, which is bare minimum. It's 6,000 to 10,000 to do the crack seal, and then 150 for resurfacing.
Which are tripping hazards.
I will say, when I went back to look at, not all the cracks are tripping hazards. There's very minimal
I was
tripping
referring
hazards.
to one he was.
Oh. I went back and looked at GIS images to find out when this trail was actually constructed. It was not in the 2007 imagery, but it was in the 2011 imagery. So somewhere between those years, that trail was constructed. So it's at least 14.
It was 2009, 2010, because I moved here in 2009, and that was being constructed right when I moved here. So
Was that how long it should last?
it's,
Being underwater constantly, probably.
yeah,
But-
so
But does the whole loop need to be resurfaced, or is it just these areas?
You could probably get by with not doing the whole thing, but the whole thing is in pretty bad aesthetic repair.
Okay.
It's,
And also.
But
to-
aesthetic repair.
yes.
Aesthetic repair.
But what you'll find
He
is
says
that if you
yes.
start doing smaller areas, it's almost as much. So if you're going
Yeah.
to make that commitment to redoing the whole thing,
Okay.
then it makes sense. But, I think we've had pretty good luck since we last did the crack seal,
and then it begs the question of, do we go back with asphalt or do we go back with concrete? And what's the longevity of the concrete versus the asphalt and upfront cost for the 2 different trails?
We can
'Cause I
get
think need to look at
estimations on that. And when I say aesthetic repair, if you look at some of the photos, they're vertical cracks. They're not tripping hazards. They're pretty even, but as water keeps penetrating, they're going to eventually rise.
So let's get the difference between asphalt and concrete.
Yep.
It's a big difference.
There is, but there's also a pretty significant difference in longevity on concrete too, and we need to kind of weigh the two. I mean, obviously, it's going to be a bigger outlay up front, but is, it, how much more time are we going to get out of it? If we're looking at 15 years on asphalt, are we going to get 40 out of concrete? Probably, if it's prepared correctly. And I know we would have to address a few of these issues, obviously, the water anyway, so.
Okay, so let's get the water addressed. Let's get the quotes for both, or I guess concrete, and then we'll weigh it and, I
just
mean, we've
get
got to
all
do
the
something.
information to
Yep.
make a good decision.
Okay.
All right. No decision made there other than direction. Village Hall planning beds update.
Thank you. Just want to give a quick update. The Village Hall planning beds, there is a specific plan or an original plan that was designed for the beds, the type of plants that go in them and all of that. The Public Works Department, so want to make everyone aware, you'll see us out here this week and next week. We plan to get the beds mulched and try to, there were some plants that were not in stock previously back in the fall when the project was done. We're gonna get our hands on those plants and try to get those installed within the next 2 weeks as well. So just wanted to just let you know that you'll be seeing us around the Village Hall property, adding mulch to the planting beds, any plants that are still needed, fixing the low voltage lighting and adding mulch around the trees for the Village Hall as well.
Andy's available, he told me.
No, he's not.
For just want to clarify as well, as he mentioned, there was a landscaping plan. It was a very nice elaborate plan. Councilman Wortman was able to get, and Councilmember Line was able to get most of the back done. I think even Mayor Polino was able to get most of the parking lot side done. Like he said, there were some that were ordered, they just weren't delivered. We don't have the time right now to go redo that entire plan to bid it out. So they're going to do very minimal portions of the front, and then they'll have to come back in the fall and finish the rest. So it's not going to be complete, just so y'all are aware.
That's fine. I mean, the idea of this was we were trying to save
Yeah.
a lot of money, and if staff can do it in increments and we can save the money, then great.
I just wanted to make sure y'all are aware it wasn't going to be 100% complete as y'all had originally
fine.
approved last year.
Okay. Great job, Davey. Thank you so much.
All right, next up, well, we went through new business, open topics. Does anybody have anything? Nothing exciting to talk about, I guess. So, okay, review of, go ahead.
I have an open topic.
Oh, I almost got
quick. I had the occasion this past week to go to the park, because school being closed, I was able to take the grandkids there. And, I'm really proud of that playground, as you had alluded to, Wayne. I mean, that is just fabulous. And there were a lot of people talking about it, talking about the play area. And even though the toddler area wasn't open up yet, a lot of people were talking about it, okay? Which, my open topic is, it kind of brings us back to the park and residents using it, being open to the public. People that just were just tonight, somebody wanted to annex into Marvin, what's the benefit of? And I started giving some thought to, as we go on, how do we make it a win-win? Instead, that's a beautiful playground area. And not to be selfish about it, but it's meant for the taxpayers of Marvin. So, how do we keep Marvinites, how do we make it exclusive? Just an open topic to think about, you know? I was thinking about the electric gates. I was thinking about codes. I was thinking about just to the people of Marvin, just a thought, okay? That's my open topic.
The whole park.
The whole part. He's opening up a can of worms.
We've actually gone this way back and forth over the
Mhm.
years,
We-
you know?
Just an
It
open
started
topic.
out where you had to get a parking pass and stuff like that,
I'd
so.
hate it, see it change 100%, 180 and with the same council, because it's essentially.
I know,
same concept.
I know Chaplin's addressed this before. If you guys want him to bring back the memo that he had provided at the last.
Yeah, I mean,
Public to whom?
Bill stating just,
Public to anybody because we've used federal funds. Yeah, it's open to
yeah,
the
and
public.
the public trust doctrine,
right.
just opens
Just
it
to-
up. And when you go to New York, you get to go to Central Park.
Oh.
Just an open topic.
Get mugged. Did I say that out
Can we
loud?
charge money for people to use the playground? How about that? The little kitty?
That was our funding. No.
I can look into that.
Just saying.
And follow up with you.
Yeah, who's
That-
gonna
that-
be, who's gonna boss that? I mean, there used to be
Andy.
someone that would.
I mean, you can't have usage
Get off
fees.
that
Andy.
swing. It's not gonna happen.
Right.
It's
You
an-
can't have some usage fees.
Right, right. Okay, moving on, review of the mayor pro Kim's list.
No, you gotta do
Austin's
first.
Oh, sorry, review of action. I was trying to go right past you. Austin.
You're
Sorry.
fine. Just a few things. Hunter is going to get a new quote for the new path for the Marvin Creek Connector Trail, as well as he's going to request a new easement from the Preserve HOA. Christina is going to execute the contract that was on the consent agenda with Centralina. I'm guessing Christina is going to talk with the Marvin Creek HOA as to why they put a time restriction on the construction of the trail being calendar year 2024. And I'm assuming Hunter and Jen will take the issue back to PRG for further discussion. Did I miss anything?
All right. Review of
My list.
I'm ready.
pro Kim's.
My micromanagement list. Radar signs.
They're complete.
Oh, they're
except one-
complete.
Oh, yeah, they say thank you when you do the speed limit.
Shut
It is so
up.
cool. I love it.
Okay, check that off my list.
You just ride back and forth.
Yeah.
School zone signs. Have you called yet?
I have not.
Okay. Will you call, please?
Yes, I.
Thank
need to
you.
Get that number.
Thank you.
The boss. there.
Additional lighting at the park, barn to lower parking lot. Posts have been ordered and they will be installed before Marvin Day. Thank you very much. Christina, have you executed the contract with AMT for the new pavement conditions survey?
I have.
Perfect. Complete that. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
All right. Let me go on to council comments before we move on. I'm good. You're good? Andy?
Fine.
I'm fine. Good.
Wayne? Wayne, anything to say?
I want to thank the PRG board, passing some things on to us and answered Jamie's questions. And staff and the Tommy and the Ed.
Okay, Jamie?
Once again, just encourage everyone out there in next door land that have concerns, questions, whatever the case may be, or just don't understand something. I know we got a lot of stuff in the UDO that people have questions about. And I would just, again, ask and plead that if you have questions with it, please call staff and have them schedule a meeting with them or with one of the council members. Be more than happy to come in and take questions in hopes that someone's misinformation doesn't provide false information to other people. Because a lot of these things, just like we were talking about the flood stuff and the FEMA stuff, that can be misinterpreted and completely blown out of proportion if, not knowing that we've already had that discussion with our connections in government. And so I would just, again, ask people if they have questions or if they have concerns and anything that they would like to discuss and get further clarification or ask why something is happening or something's not happening, to request a meeting. That, when we have our council meetings and we have our work sessions and stuff like that, you get 3 minutes, and that's just not the appropriate place to, I mean, you can voice the concern, but it's not the appropriate place to really kind of have a dialogue. And the best place to have the dialogue is coffee with council. And I'm guessing, you know, from what I'm hearing, that we're getting more and more people to coffee with council, which is great. And then, but again, having that dedicated time with a council member or staff to provide clarification on something brings us all together, because we're all one community, and we all working together as one community. It should not be that we're adversaries, and we're doing everything that we can based on what information we have and we're provided. So I would just ask that respect that, and we're open to you. We're here for you. You know, you're not there for us. We're here for you. And I want to take that to every level that we possibly can. So staff, thanks for all you do. Y'all are always out there hustling and giving it all you got. And thanks for everything you do. Thank you. All right.
Wow. Kim.
Thank you to staff as always. You guys do a great job. That's it.
I'll finish up by, again, thanking staff and the officers for their work they do. We're going to miss Tommy. And I know, but when he is. I'd like to thank Boy Scout. I think I agree with you. I watched him present, and it was cool to see a kid that age looking up at us. And direct eye contact at that age is pretty impressive. So he must have had some lessons with that, because right now most kids are looking down at their phones and don't know how to talk or communicate. So it was very nicely done. Hope you all enjoyed spring break. We did. Had a nice long week with the family, and including my oldest daughter. Hope you all got to see the eclipse yesterday. I only went to 5 stores before I learned that Southern Spirits was the only one selling in the area that had them in stock. And there was 20 deep, but it was fun.
Why don't you come here?
Fine.
Oh, they got a bunch of them now.
Oh, now they went on sale.
I'll sell you mine.
And then a final reminder, we had some approval in this with the sign is probably going to go up, but Freaky Friday play, the high school play, is Friday the 19th at 7 p.m. Also Saturday, they have a matinee from 2 to 4:30 and 7 to 8 p.m. So go out, support the theater at Marvin Ridge. They do a really nice job of the plays they put on. I hope you get an opportunity to see that. And that's all I had. And with that, I need a motion to move into closed session, I believe.
I'll make a motion to recess into closed session pursuant to NCGS 14331.8.11A6 to discuss personnel.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed.
We're in
Thank
closed
you all.
session.
Just back right. Do I need to?
Something, Joe, I hadn't.